just so you know. But they could be watching. Calling the meeting to order. We'll first start off with the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence. So there are 3 attorneys before us today from Barton Gilman LLP. Just as I know the rest of the attorneys aren't here at the time, but just so the rest of the committee knows, and if everyone else is in agreement, we'll ask every other attorney that comes in to wait for us in the hallway until we're done with one firm, and that way we can move through each firm one by one. Does that sound fair to everyone else at this time? Okay. So at this time, we would welcome Attorney Stephen Adams, Timothy Groves, and Stephanie Gonzalez to please approach the podium if that's what you're most comfortable with. Or you can stand there, whichever's most. You want us to stand? Sure. We would just have to move over a microphone. I'm not sure if. We can
This one
that,
work?
no.
No, take,
So we can
yeah,
move
bring
this
that
one
right-
over.
Yep.
Comfortable.
I always
Yeah,
wanted
feel free to grab the mic. It's
There you
yeah.
go.
Wow.
Feel free to grab the mic if you want, whatever works
Oh, I
for
can
you.
pull it
yeah,
out.
pass it around.
Oh,
yeah.
wow. All right. Yeah, the lounge singer. What am I doing here, Stephanie? Does it come out? Oh, I got it. All right. Boy, you're so
Pass it
kind.
around if
Thank
you
you. Oh, wow. Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's probably fine.
If you guys would like to go ahead and introduce yourselves before we get started, that'd be greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Sure. So I'm Steve Adams.
Tim Groves.
I'm Stephanie Gonzalez.
That's who we are. We're from Barton Gilman. We have a whole education law practice of which we are all members. So what can we tell you?
So we have a couple of questions prepared, but feel free to add any additional information as you please. This is more of a guidance. We want to hit all these different topics just so we have a good understanding of everything. So first we'll start off with how many school districts do you represent, and how many of your attorneys specialize in education?
So in Rhode Island, we are, for traditional public schools, we represent the Cumberland School Department, Jamestown, and Narragansett. We're also called upon at various times to serve as conflicts counsel for various other traditional public schools. We also represent, for example, the Met, which is a statewide CTE school. We represent innumerable public charter schools in the state of Rhode Island. I don't have a list of those, but it's got to be upwards of 15. We represent a few private schools as well in Rhode Island, and our education law practice actually is not just in Rhode Island. We have schools, we represent schools in Massachusetts, Connecticut. We have an office in New York where we represent schools. We have an office in Philadelphia where we represent schools in Pennsylvania, and even in New Jersey, and touching upon into the state of Maryland. We do not do the stuff that's beyond Massachusetts and Rhode Island, really, but our firm has a geographic reach that allows us to leverage a number of different lawyers throughout our law firm. If I had to count the number of lawyers that do ed work, is it about 12, something about that? About 12 lawyers do education work. In our Providence office, there are 5 primary lawyers who do education work, and we tag in others as needed on that work.
And how many of those districts in Rhode Island do you service special education expertise?
All of them.
All of them.
And same thing for all the public schools that we work with, whether they are traditional public schools or non-traditional, like a charter school or like the Met. We serve as, I guess I would call it general counsel, where we do the general work for the school department, and we also do special ed.
And how would East Providence School Department's work be distributed within your firm?
So that's a good question. I mean, ultimately, how it would be distributed would be up to you guys. The folks that you feel most comfortable working with, we generally try to make sure that we fit the lawyer to the client, as opposed to make the client deal with a lawyer that we give to them. Typically, I have served as a primary contact person. Tim has as well. And I think that would probably be where it would start, and then we just see how it goes organically, because you guys will know who you like working with and who the folks are that you like to talk to. And principally, I think, while it would be with the school committee, often it's with the superintendent on almost a daily basis. That's generally the way it works. But I typically serve in that role as the general sort of point of contact for the clients that I work with.
And similarly to what you discussed, is that similar also to how work would be distributed if someone has to go before the Labor Relations Board or court? Does it also depend, on
Yeah, I mean, it depends on a myriad of things. Availability of who's available in our firm, who's got the primary responsibility, who has handled the matter from the beginning. And we tend to staff, it depends on what it is. For example, collective bargaining. Stephanie and I just spent a lot of time together negotiating 2 collective bargaining agreements together because we were doing 2 at once in one district with kind of contentious negotiations. So both of us worked together to make sure that we were doing what was best for the client, and the client was on board with the way we were handling it. So we were both the point of contact at various times, and both had to be involved intimately with what was going on. Flip that around to sort of a busing dispute, which sometimes happens. A family thinks they're entitled to a bus here or there, and maybe it's one of us who handles that at the Rhode Island Department of Education. So it really depends on what the circumstances are in terms of how it gets staffed. I hope that answers that question. Yeah.
And what type of professional development can you offer to East Providence?
So we do, we'll do anything and everything that you might need, and some stuff that probably should be done more frequently than it does get done. We do a lot of Title IX training in a lot of different districts. While I'm the one bloviating, Mr. Groves here, I would say he would not like it when I said this, but he is probably the best Title IX lawyer in the state of Rhode Island. He is called upon all the time to be doing investigations. He is superlative in that regard. We do a lot of Title IX work, special ed, labor, general employment counseling and professional development, student discipline, making sure that admin understands what your discipline process requires of them, and making sure that that discipline process is actually in compliant with United States Supreme Court case law. There's some cases on that, and some RIDE developments with respect to that. Anything and everything that happens in schools, we touch it. So that's kind of a list. Did I miss anything?
No.
Yeah, go ahead.
The other thing I would add is that Rhode Island general law requires that school committee members receive 6-hour credit for professional development. And so with many of our school clients, we've developed personalized webinar series. They could either be in person, they could be sort of recordings that school committee members could then watch on their own time, and then we issue certificates of completion. So those are all things that we do to sort of tailor it to whatever the client needs to meet those hours.
You got anything?
Just one, yeah, because I think there's a variety. There's professional development for the board level, but then also recently, and this happens to be in the Title IX context, but we worked with a district on compliance, and it was audit and redoing of their policies, and it was trainings with students, with community members, with athletic coaches, with administrators, with faculty, and it was all kind of broken out into different focus groups to really kind of let them know, what do you need to know about Title IX, and focus it that way, and how are we going to build awareness in this district. And so that was really a comprehensive effort, where we were really more consultants than lawyers in that endeavor. And I think it stretched us a little bit, but it was a great way to kind of do professional development for the whole community, not just one small targeted group. So we had to think about it holistically, which was a great exercise for us.
And what type of professional development have you and attorneys in your practice group received within like the last 2 years about?
Oh gosh. Well, all of the above, and then various other things. For example, I was just on a CLE about special education work. I was just on a CLE on employment work, and which sounds great, except in Rhode Island there's a requirement that lawyers get continuing legal education. I am also admitted in Connecticut, New York, and Massachusetts, and they have really significant, we call it CLE requirements, so we are constantly doing CLE. Those are just 2 or 3. I also was on one, and this is actually, we both did one. I did a different one on litigation holds. We just got it for a client, a school client as it turns out, what's called a litigation hold, where some lawyer says, I'm thinking of suing you. Don't get rid of anything forever. That's basically what a litigation hold is. And I happened to stumble upon one, so I saw that because I just gotten this letter. Of course, I'm kind of used to litigation holds because outside of our ed practice, our firm is a bread and butter litigation firm. As a matter of fact, the only thing that I would say differentiates us from the other folks who are coming to see you, and we know them and they're all great lawyers, and we work with them, both Henny's, Carroll, and Lombardo, and Ben's firm, from time to time will refer things to each other. But I think our firm, the biggest delta between us and others is that we are a litigation firm outside of the context of education, and we do a great deal of it in Rhode Island and elsewhere. So that is a wonderful backdrop to helping us be good for clients in this space, because I don't think there's any better training for a lawyer than litigation. Any other CLEs that you guys have done or thought about?
Well, ATIXA, so the Association of Title IX Administrators, we've done a lot of that, obviously with the new amendments, and 504, same as well. So I've focused in those areas lately. But also one thing, just to get back to the question you asked earlier about special ed, we also represent the Rhode Island Association of Special Ed Administrators, ARISE. I always butcher their acronym, but they're great. And the interesting thing is, so we'll do special ed, we'll do professional development for them, as well as legislative advocacy up at the State House, when it's in session. And so in offering panels, and I've been on panels with Andrew and Aubrey as well for these panels, but in giving CLEs as well, you've got to study up, it's one of the best ways to learn the subject matter is actually when you are a panelist, and we do a lot of that.
Got anything? I will also add that I'm now a professor, and I'm called professor a lot of times.
He makes us all call him
Yeah.
professor.
I'm adjunct at Providence College. I'm teaching in the Graduate School for Education Leaders, so I'm teaching a law class, and it has actually been awesome. We spend a lot of time on First Amendment. Kid comes into school with a shirt that no one really wants a kid to be wearing. What do you do? That sort of stuff. We spend lots of time on religion in the schools, First Amendment, Fourth Amendment. So that has been a lot of fun for me. I do it, it's a class once a week, and this is my third semester. I would love to do that for the rest of my career. It's just a lot of fun.
And can you describe your role in policy development? I know you touched upon it, but if you could really kind of go into what it may look like in different districts.
So I guess I'll answer it one way, and then Stephanie maybe can help me. So I'm going to think of that question with small p, not necessarily the East Providence School Committee's policies. So we had an issue for a school department. It was the Cumberland School Department. And it is policy, believe it or not, that I'm going to get to. It may take me some time, but I'm going to get there. The school department had a practice of what they called early release Wednesdays. So for years, for about 8 or 9 years, they would release teachers and students, everybody early, so that they could do common planning time for all teachers at the same time every Wednesday for an hour. And it was incredibly effective at moving the district. If you go and look at the district scores from, say, 2014, 2015 to now, you will see growth that is remarkable. They went from kind of middling to a top 5 district. And a lot of that, the educators, the educational leaders, attributed to CPT and the way they did it. They were really rigid and they handled it in that way. Well, our friends at the Rhode Island Department of Education decided that that they were going to require it was in their regs, but they were going to really require every school department to do what's called 330 minutes every day of instructional time, which is 5.5 hours. Cumberland, in this early release Wednesday, was not meeting that obligation. However, the statute that made RIDE capable of creating the regulations that said 330 minutes was much more flexible. And it said as long as you get to a certain number of hours a year, do it however you think is appropriate, school department. We went to RIDE, we had discussions with them. Sometimes our friends at RIDE don't move as quickly as we would like them to move, and so we went around their back, went right to the legislature, changed the law that gave us flexibility to make it exceedingly clear that that flexibility trumped this 330-minute a day obligation. And so within the space of 6 months, we got the law changed, and now Cumberland is back doing early release Wednesdays this year after missing it for a year. So I think of that as policy, either small p or big P, but the gist is it's turning something around at a high level to try to get the school department to be able to do what it should be doing without, I guess I would use the term interference from our friends at the Rhode Island Department of Education. That's one way to look at it.
Yeah, so in my experience, the policy work comes to us in a number of ways. So one way that we we get the work from school clients is a client says, we haven't looked at our handbooks in a really long time, and we're pretty sure that there are things in here that are outdated, but we cannot tell you which ones. And so they'll send us handbooks, whether it's staff, family, and staff. We initially do research on statutes, ensuring that whatever's currently in the handbooks matches what the latest statute says on the issue, and it'll be state statutes and also federal statutes. That work takes a really long time. It's a lot of working closely with whomever in the district is sort of overseeing that process. And typically, that's work that takes months to get from beginning to end. Another way is, I would call it more of a reactive approach to policy, which something happens in the school, in the district, and the client feels strongly that it needs to be addressed in policy so that every stakeholder is clear what the position of the district or school is on a particular issue. As an example, a school committee member for a client that we have heard from parents that their children and they had been subjected to some form of alleged discrimination. And so the committee member who chairs the policy committee decided, you know what, I'd like to develop a policy that really is clear and directly addresses the needs and the requests of parents. And so that's sort of, maybe reactive is the not the right word, but a responsive approach to policy. And then another example is just if there are regulations or new laws that come down from the federal government, we try to be proactive on that end and develop standard or templates for those policies and proactively share them with our school clients so that they can then take the templates and adopt them to meet their internal needs.
And can you also describe your role in collective bargaining negotiations as well? It also depends per school district, but feel free to kind of give us different examples if that works.
Yeah, so sometimes we're helping to guide in collective bargaining from the back room, so to speak. But for example, this year we spent a great, I guess I would use the term inordinate, and I really do mean that to a certain extent, an inordinate amount of time working, and this was Cumberland as well. With respect to that particular public school client, it's a similarly sized school department to you guys, and they tap us with great frequency, which is great because we like that we got into this purposefully. This is work that we love to do. We're here because we love doing this work, not because we just stumbled into this law firm. We kind of created this practice area for our firm a long time ago now, but in any event, our role is to serve as basically chief negotiator if that's what the client wants, and we just finished that with 2 contracts that we just had to re-ratify one of them because there was, to the credit of both sides, there was an error in one of the TAs that everybody acknowledged was an error, and we got that fixed. But our role is basically to help the district and the people who are working on that negotiating committee with us to try to get to yes on a collective bargaining agreement. I think it's not much more complicated than that, although, you have any thoughts on that? I mean, you took some blows as well during that. You want anything to add?
I guess I would add, so this was my first time working on collective bargaining as an attorney. I'll share that prior to going to law school, I did serve on the Central Falls School District Board of Trustees for just under 12 years, and the last 3 years of that time, I was chair of the board, and so saw many collective bargaining seasons, and so have that experience of being in your shoes now and approaching it from that perspective. But from the attorney perspective, I think my takeaway was just there are goals that both sides have, and there's some in between that we have to get to, and it's strategizing with the client on how do we best get there in a place that leaves both sides feeling like, okay, we accomplished something good, whether it was related to practices related to teaching and learning, or some effect on finances, but that also left both parties able to work after this process in a way that was amicable and in the best interest of kids.
And can you describe your experience with arbitration cases? And thank you for also including a good number of exhibits as well.
Yeah, so we've had our fair share of cases that have gone to arbitration, labor arbitration. Most of those have been termination cases, and we have been successful in all of those. Actually, I think we've been successful in all the labor arbitrations, whether they were terminations or we've had some on interpretation of contract, and I think the last one we went to related to sabbatical. A sabbatical leave clause in a policy, and we were successful at arbitration. I have found, and that's been something I think I've probably done more of than anybody else in the firm, if I'm not mistaken about that. And I have found that process is a lot easier than I think it's made out to be. I think that particularly when it comes to termination cases, for example, the school committee has the burden of proof. You have to prove that there was good and just cause if you're going to arbitration. I assume your collective bargaining agreement has an arbitration clause in it. I'm guessing it probably does. You have to prove, if you're going to terminate a teacher, you guys would have to prove that you had good and just cause. The teacher doesn't have to prove anything. So when you go in as the lawyer, you're the one carrying the burden. You have to prove it, which is a slightly different role than you would think it would be for the management side. But really, ultimately, as long as the artifacts are what they should be, and if you've gotten to that point, they are, because you wouldn't be there unless they're appropriate artifacts. And sometimes we come in well before we're at arbitration to make sure that those are artifacts, the evidence, the stuff that you need to convince the arbitrator is actually there. And so when you're putting together the arbitration, that's sort of the end of it. You should be in good shape. You wouldn't be there unless you were in good shape. And so, again, our litigation background, I mean, I still do straight litigation, but I spent the first 10 years of my practice straight litigation without doing much education work. And you can't, there's no replacement for that. That is really important to have that experience. And I think that's one of the reasons that when we handle arbitrations, we've generally been successful, because we know what the evidence is that we're going to need to put on, because we've done it so many times in so many different circumstances. So
I just have two hypothetical questions, of course. And again, feel free to answer them however you feel fit. First one is, how would you approach a scenario where a school committee member requests to conduct an investigation without the knowledge or consent of the superintendent or other members of the school committee?
can I start that one? So that's good. Have you been in my head? Because I've had that situation. So respectfully to all of you members of the school committee, to the extent that we were your counsel, right? We are not the counsel for any one of you. We are the counsel for the school committee, this sort of concept that doesn't have any flesh or bones. And so when one of you is, I would call it going rogue in that hypothetical, because you act as a body, you do not act individually, then that, how it gets handled, it's not like I'm going to tell on that person. I'm going to say, really, there's no investigation to do. You're going to need to work within the rules. That may be something where that thing that you want investigated, that is your thing that you think should be investigated, I'm looking at all of you because it could be any one of you, is not your thing at all. It's the superintendent's job exclusively, maybe even statutorily under the enabling statute for superintendents. So that's the end of the discussion. And that may be upsetting to the person who hears that advice, but that is the advice. And I guess the bigger picture advice is our job is not to sort of tell anybody what they want to hear. That's not our job. Our job is to tell you guys the truth, to give the best legal advice we can all the time. And sometimes that can be upset. Try to do it in a kind way, of course, but our job is to basically tell you the truth. And so in that circumstance, if it would never be appropriate for an individual school committee member to want to initiate an investigation on their own, but we would have to confront that with that person and then figure out what the damage that might have been done depending on how far down the road that person got. So did I miss anything in that? Okay.
And next is if there is a disagreement on a matter between, it's similar to what we were just speaking about, if there is a disagreement on a matter between the superintendent and school committee, are you as legal counsel for the district capable of remaining neutral, and how would you encourage the parties to move forward?
So that's a good question. And I would say, I mean, that does happen from time to time, but ultimately the way it really depends on the circumstances. I hate, this is like the classic lawyer answer, right? And I may have to force this to one of these people who will be less diplomatic or whatever. But, if there's a disagreement between the way the superintendent wants to do something and the way the school committee wants to do something, my job is to give advice, essentially. Our job is to give advice to the school committee. That's generally who hires us, unless the relationship is set up slightly differently. But that advice may be, well, listen, you may want to do this, but this really is the superintendent's role. Or it may be, I know the superintendent wants to do this, but if you guys want this, you can take it by doing X, Y, or Z, creating policy A, amending policy B, and this could be something that you want to do. I may also say, be careful what you wish for. Do you really want to have, using busing is a big one. So I don't know whether you folks have busing snafus, but there are definitely school departments that do. And sometimes I think school committees, sometimes as a consequence, want to get into the weeds of it, and then all of a sudden they're dealing with whether that kid is getting on that bus today at 7:38 or 7:41, and that's hard to do from the chairs you guys are sitting in. But I hope that answers the question. Any other thoughts? Okay.
At this moment, I'd like to ask the committee if there are any additional questions you'd like to add in from this conversation that we've.
Yeah, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate you coming out here this evening. I have a handful of questions, but they might be a little popcorned around because I didn't jump in while you were answering, and so, to kind of start off, I'm curious, when was the education department, so to say, in your firm installed?
Yeah, so I think I can tackle that because I think I'm the one who started that. I think it probably started when I took a class on education law in 1995 at the University of Connecticut Law School with a guy named Tom Mooney, who is kind of still practicing, but he's a big player in the education space in the state of Connecticut, a practicing lawyer, and he taught education law, and I was entranced. And then I got into this firm with these crazy people at the law firm I joined right when I got out of law school, same law firm, several years later now, 28 years. And so after about 5 or 6 years, I became a partner, and but I really had a passion I wanted to do this work. So I just started talking to people who were in this space. So this is the early aughts. And then we started to get some clients. And so I would say it's been about somewhere between 20, about 20 years, 20, 21 years that we started to from when we started to build this practice. And then Matt Plain joined in '06. You joined in what, '07? And we've had various folks involved, and then the whole practice has exploded because we have it now geographically outside of this area with offices, with folks that we work with them. What's great about having that is that we're able to bounce ideas off, because a lot of this stuff, especially when you're talking about Title IX, that's federal. The special education regs, even though Rhode Island has its own version of them, that's federal law. So we talk with those folks all the time, but that's when that practice started, and it was I thank my partners even to this day for allowing me to expand into it, but it's been 20 years now. I can't even believe that, a little more than that.
So, 20 years, and then, you know, Stephanie and Stephen, how long? Steve, oh, I'm so sorry.
No, that's okay. That's okay. I'm Steve.
Yeah. So I got there a little bit later than Steve, because I was a high school English teacher for a while, and went to law school at night, and then got to Barton Gilman just as we were starting to launch the ed law practice, so since '07. And I think the great thing about it was we had to build it kind of incrementally, so we were doing litigation to keep the lights on. Right, and that, as Steve alluded to earlier, I think is invaluable in terms of how we counsel our clients. Because as Steve said, like, you don't know what you need at an arbitration until you've litigated cases. And now your advice on how to prevent getting there, or how to ensure that you have what you need when you get there, is informed by that experience. And it's pretty hard won, and it gives you a unique perspective. So it was great to get to Barton Gilman when I did in '07, when they were starting that practice, but it was also great that it wasn't the only thing I did from the time I started there, because we got to be entrepreneurial and build it ourselves, but also do those other things that I think make us, well-rounded lawyers that are able to tackle a lot of the issues that you're going to see.
I would just add that I think Matt joined us in '05 or '06, so another one of our partners.
And also a teacher before you.
And has been a professor, I think, too. Adjunct at Roger Williams.
So I joined in 2022. I'd say I was drawn to the firm in large part because I had spent so much time doing the policy work that school committees do. And I'd like to say that that's one of the reasons the firm was drawn to me when we first started talking about me joining the firm.
So essentially, with the the 3 public school departments, and the 15 charter schools, and the variety of private schools, and Steve, you play lead on all of those schools?
No, I generally would call myself the lead on the traditional public schools, and I do represent a couple of private schools as well. I would say Matt and Tim would take the lead on the charter work, and then a few private schools as well. I am the one who is really been the primary with the traditional public schools. That's why I was sort of thinking the default would be me were we selected. But again, that'll be up to you guys. You may say, I like Stephanie, so that could happen easily.
Good. Never know. And then you talked a little bit about the way that you guys would the providing of counsel in any litigation situations, or with RIDE outside of the district. How would you make our district aware of, one, who would be the driver of those situations, and two, just all the back end work that goes into that? How would our district feel confident that we know who is working on cases?
So I guess I think that's an easy one. We would just be communicative with you. This is what we're doing. This is how we're handling it. This is what we think. We generally try to make sure that we're staffing our cases in a way that makes sense, that we have the right person doing the work. And so I think it's not any more complicated than that. Do you? I mean,
So I guess a further in your current experience with the districts that you're representing, is your best practice for communication with an entire school committee as a whole, or just with the chair, or just with the superintendent, or a mixture of the three?
I would say it's a mixture. I would say for the most part, every school committee may want to do things its own way, obviously. But for the most part, and it really depends on who the superintendent is and what sort of relationship the superintendent has with that school committee. Sometimes that can be frayed. Sometimes it can be terrific. It's great when it's terrific, because then everything you're communicating with the superintendent, the school committee chair and perhaps the whole school committee is hearing about. But generally, it will be either with the superintendent, either daily or every few days or whatever, depending on the size of the district. And sometimes, to a lesser extent, with the chair. And then we will, depending on the relationship with that client, and this is true for charters as well, we sometimes are at the board meetings or at the school committee meetings every time, or we're there when they want us there. So it just depends on how that relationship is structured. I think depending on what your needs are, and with a district of this size, it could be of great value to have us at your meetings, because if we're here, we're seeing what you're seeing, and we can talk with you about what we're doing in real time, in exec, for example. So that is a valuable way for that for that sort of, it's not daily with you folks, but it's sort of every few weeks.
Right. Additionally, I think, in kind of just jumping along, thank you. I was hoping you might be able to just go a little deeper in terms of like the professional development that you've established for the communities. I think it's really, really awesome to have some sort of approved professional development plan that school committee members can participate in to get the required 6 hours yearly. I was hoping you might be able to go just a little bit deeper in terms of the professional development you mentioned for like administration and teachers and staff that you talked about, because it's just something that. Tim?
Yeah, we can both, but so, and sometimes it's mixed, right? Well, it'll be school leaders and board members. For like associations or whatever, or with Arise, it'll be for, the special ed directors. It can be specialized like that. 504, came out with some amendments this year. So let's talk about how those changes are going to impact, your special ed department. Education of students with disabilities. 504 is not special ed. That's one of the first things we lead with. But things of that nature, where if there's either, as Stephanie said, and not so much reactive but responsive to, are there changes? This year, Title IX got a lot of press, right? 504 got a lot of press, and so we've kind of focused on that. But then every year, we'll do a refresher of roles and responsibilities for school committee members. Right? We'll do sunshine laws, right? What are your open meeting requirements? What are your APRA requirements? And are there some nuances in the last General Assembly, session that came about that, we want to make sure you're updated. So just kind of focusing on different interest groups, but also recognizing, like with Title IX in that one district where, there are different messages to be delivered, or variations of a theme to be delivered and differentiated to different interest groups. And kind of meeting them where they are and saying, here's what you really need to know. Like, this is what we're going to focus on. And so I think we enjoy doing that, and we do, between policy work up at the State House or advocacy work up at the State House and those kind of consulting arrangements, it's actually interesting because when you're general counsel for schools, one of the reasons we love it so much, I think there's such a variety of things that you're doing all the time. So that's something that we really enjoy. And the professional development, because we're all, educators really in one way or another, and I don't put it in the past tense, we really do enjoy doing that piece of it.
Yeah.
I would just add that it's really kind of, if you think about whiteboarding, what kind of professional development is in your head as something that either the school committee might be interested in, or whether it's admin, whether it's families and students. I would say that that's a pretty unique way of looking at it. The example that Tim gave earlier, that's something that I've never seen. I think, Tim, that was the first time that we've ever brought in to do a wholesale training on non-discrimination broadly for a district. And so really it's kind of the ball's in your court. We could design that together and identify what are the key components that you all want to receive on that front.
And it's fun for us each year, with the board education. I know you're asking not just for the board education, but coming up with that curriculum, like what's, because there's the staples, there's the roles and responsibilities, and there's the open meetings, because you can never get too much of that. But then there's like, what are we going to do that's new and different this year? Like what's topical? What do people need to know? Obviously, COVID presented a lot of opportunities for some novel issues. But now that we're kind of every year we get to sit down as a practice group and think about, what's interesting, what's new, what do people need to know? What do we want to talk about?
That's great. And I guess like my final question really is about like finances, right? So I was just curious, and I'm sure it's not foreign to any district or ones that you're representing, but we're working on a very tight budget, and I was wondering if you maybe could talk about like your hourly rate, and then talk about in terms of how you are able to kind of like manage that in your experience. The professional developments sound great. They also sound like very costly. Just like the development, the implementing it, like if it's a lot of different groups that's coming out to it, and that's just the reality of it, and that's that's fine. But do you think maybe you could just talk about like your hourly rate, and then in terms of what your experience is in the other schools you're representing, and how like you kind of are working with those committees in terms of managing, living within like a budgetary like guideline, and ensuring that stability of not just, and of course like we're going to spend money on legal, obviously.
So there are many ways to handle that relationship. We have done just a fee for service, and I think in this proposal we put a blended $230 an hour. For lawyers. We have flat fee arrangements with certain clients. We have partial flat fee arrangements depending on the use that the school committee, or really it would typically be the superintendent. Those daily calls might be on a flat fee. And the way you structure that, it's actually really easy to come up with that. It's hard to do it initially. Coming up with some number for a flat fee is impossible because it's just a shot in the dark. So you develop experience. You spend some time on a fee for service, and you say, it looks like they're utilizing our services, 10 hours a month. Okay, so let's charge $2,000. I'm making that up on a monthly basis, or $4,000 if they're using us more. And then you structure maybe litigation, which usually gets accepted out of those. Litigation is that is a hard thing to do on anything other than an hourly fee basis. And so there are a million ways to do it. The hard thing, and I guess I will say, we are very aware of the constraints because all of you, all across the state, have a very similar challenge that you live with and have to deal with. And I'm guessing, I don't know whether our rates are our current rates. I haven't looked at what the other folks have proposed, but ours are probably around the ballpark. They might even be a little bit higher. I generally don't think this is going to come across initially as cavalier. Please understand it isn't intended that way. But the delta between our rates is not super important. And nor is the amount ultimately that you spend, as long as what you're doing is spending it correctly and what you're spending it on, and there's a value to you doing it, right? No matter what that number is, obviously within rational reason. But, one of the things that is really important is, while that cannot help but be part of your analysis, I think it's like any other partnership that you have. You have to, the lawyer has to know when what they're billing and what they're doing, and communicate with the client. We shouldn't die on this hill because it's going to cost you $40,000 to die on this hill. Let's just leave this one alone. And if it's a union grievance or something, maybe we just resolve it. Maybe there are reasons to spend $40,000 on that grievance that have nothing to do with the amount in controversy, but having the conversation before we get to that point, or saying, this is going to cost $100,000 in legal fees. Do we really want to take this special education case to the First Circuit? All that stuff is part of the communication process that goes on. So generally, I think, especially the firms that you have coming in here tonight, all of us are probably pretty good at that stuff, I would imagine, in terms of having those communications. There's really no other way to talk about it other than to actually talk about it with you guys when it's happening.
Great, thank you.
Would any other committee members like to add in any additional questions? You have 9? Sure.
Ryan, thank you for your questions. There was some of them that he presented to you guys. Just a question, if we was to have you come into like our meetings, is there a flat rate? Would that fall under the $230 an hour?
So to school committee meetings, is that what you're saying? So we can do it, we can do a flat fee, or we can do fee for service. What I would suggest is, again, for the same reason, are you wanting us to come just to exec? Are you wanting us to come to the whole meeting? We love to go to the whole meeting because there's a lot of stuff that happens in your meetings that we think can be helpful to our relationship. But yeah, what I would suggest is we might handle it fee for service, see how it works for a few months, and then say, okay, because you get the bill and it itemizes how long we've spent, how much it cost. And then we say, okay, this is looking like it's around $1,000. I'm making that up. So let's go with a flat fee of $1,000. That seems fair. And then we continue to track that, by the way. We have a devotion to putting our time into the little computer and figuring out how much time we spent on something, even when we're billing you at a flat fee. And that works to both of our benefits. Frankly, usually it doesn't necessarily benefit us because we end up spending more time on the flat fee than we're getting paid for. I have to be honest about that. But if it were really out of whack, we'd have to have a conversation about that and say, that's one of the reasons we continue to track our time. Because if we know you're paying $1,000 for that service and we're spending 150 hours a month on that, that's probably not appropriate for us, right? So that's one of the reasons we track that. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
Second question would be, with your other districts, how often do you communicate with the person?
I would say infrequently in Jamestown, on occasion in Narragansett. Both of those are very small school departments, and with relative frequency in Cumberland. I think it also depends on the charters too with respect to that. It runs the gamut. It really runs the gamut with those two. You'll have chairs that you'll talk to almost daily and chairs that you never talk to.
The firm has no issue, dealing with the chairman and all that. Say like if we was to meet twice a month or once a month to just give him that bill and breakdown so we get to see it at that weekly meeting, monthly meeting.
Oh, so if you're talking about our billings, generally what we do is we bill every month. The bill would come to typically goes to the finance folks, but you're the client. If you want it to come to you, that's where it goes. So we don't direct that. That would be up to you how you want it. And then you would see our bills are itemized, attend XYZ event with a number of, 1.5 hours times the rate, whatever, and you'll see the whole thing. That's entirely in your court to decide whether you want to see that every single time it gets generated.
I like to see whatever I'm paying.
100%, 100%.
Thank you, Jen.
Anything else? Okay. Max or Jessica?
Hi.
Hi there.
Before coming tonight, have you guys seen any of our school committee meetings?
I have not.
Okay, because you said you wanted to come to one, and I just want to know if you've seen them. Why do you guys feel your firm is right for us?
So that's a good question. I guess I would say the reason I feel that our firm is right for you guys is that we have really good experience with a district that's not dissimilar to East Providence and Cumberland. We have a great deal of bench strength in terms of the work that we do and how we do it. And it's not insignificant that we chose this. Like, this was what we all wanted to do this work. So the more we get to do it, the more people we get to help, the more school committees that we get to partner with and help them in their mission, I think the happier we are. I don't know. Thoughts?
Yeah, I agree, and I'll share that, as someone who's worked at the firm the least number of years, I think we bring something really special to the table. I was going to joke and say that the reason why is because I wanted to spend more time in this auditorium. But no, I think we bring something really special to the table. We have a deep bench. I think about the ways in which the work sort of flows through the firm, whether it's going to Steve or another partner and trickles down to me as an associate. The strategy that goes on, the approach that we take, the going to each other's offices and saying, hey, just got this email, can we talk through it? Hey, just conducted some research. Can you review this, before we send out to the client to make sure that it's appropriate? The layers, the amount of times that you will receive work product that has been touched by really talented attorneys. And I just think it's really special. It's really substantive. It's comprehensive. And I think that just even getting to know you all a little bit today, I think it'd be a really good match.
Yeah, I would just say, echoing what both of my partners have said, we really enjoy doing this work. And I think one of the things that I've enjoyed in developing my practice is that we didn't start out with like a ready-made ed law practice. Like when we had to build, and so we did the work that other ed lawyers, weren't doing. Like they were negotiating CBAs and then, litigating grievances for 3 years and doing it again. And so maybe they weren't doing special ed law. So we would come in to do that piece of it. We learned how to do that. We'd jump the fence and represent families doing special ed law when that was, not something you're going to do if you have an established practice. Like we represented the charter schools because that was the third rail. We did, so we learned all these things, kind of organically, and got to do a great variety of different things. And then I had never done a Title IX case before 2020, ever.
No one had.
Nobody.
It was not
right?
a thing, really. Even though it was a thing.
And now it's a cottage industry. It's like 40% of my practice. It's crazy. So these things that come along and just being receptive to it and having been, educators, I love being in schools. I'd much rather be, in a school than, sitting in my, although I have a nicer office now, but, still, but it's really fun for us to get to engage with you all, both at the committee level, and, with the superintendents who we hear from more regularly, than you all, to be honest. But it's one of the reasons we love and we flat rate school committee meetings because we like going to them. And some of it, that's also, the issue spotting from our litigation days to be like, oh, here comes something. No one sees it coming, but I do, and so, it's a great variety of work, which we really appreciate. And I think this would be a lot of fun if we get it.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate. Oh, yeah.
How would you just generally summarize your working relationship with other school districts that you work with?
I guess I would say our job, big picture, our job is to help support the mission of that school. So what the needs are of that school is what we are there to try to help. I guess I would also say this: when that works well, it's because the folks sitting in your chairs are working well with the central office team, who is working well with the lawyers. And so that when that is working well, everything works well at your level. When it's not working well, it can be a different story. But I think that is one thing that we try to encourage in our advice is to try to make sure that you guys can work together as well as possible, whoever the school committee is, because that helps everybody, and ultimately, it helps the students in your charge. Anybody else?
Yeah, because I'll tackle it from a little bit different angle in terms of our working relationship with a school. Like, because I had an anecdote today that I think is emblematic of that. It's a Massachusetts school that Steve doesn't happen to work with. Actually, Matt, who's not here tonight, is the lead. But because it's his birthday, he wasn't in the office, I caught the call. Yeah. So I caught the crisis situation call and, tried to triage that, give him the best advice I could. But as soon as I hung up with the client, the first person I called was Steve, right? Who doesn't work with that. And he did.
What was I doing?
I know. I was bad call by you. And so, sounding board, got his advice, whatever. And then Stephanie and she has a more active role with this client and doing a ton of policy work. So then the next thing was like, Stephanie, can you check out this email? I want to give them this advice. Like, would you just read it before we hit send? So our relationship with our working relationship with our clients, I think that illustrates the deep bench, right? Because that client had the misfortune of, Matt not being there, so they had to talk to me. But I had the good fortune to have my colleagues to kind of bounce some stuff off, so I didn't, give them bad legal advice. And I think it's one of those things, that's one of the great things about our working relationship with firms, is that we all work together. Even if Steve happened to be the lead on this one, he wouldn't call me, he'd call Stephanie. But still, you'd get good advice.
Additional questions, Max?
Jen, just one question, guys. Do you have any in your firm, or would you guys handle any construction law where we've built, $400-500 million? We know we're going to have issues.
So that is an exceptionally good question, and it will tie into rates, unfortunately. So we can do that, sure. And I think the folks who are going to come in, they're going to say they can do it too. But that would be a mistake. So we had an issue with an architect who filed a TRO, a motion for a temporary restraining order, because his position was that a contract should be enforceable. I won't bore you with the details. And sure, I can do that. I've been doing litigation for 28 years. You heard me. I'm fancy. I'm all that sort of stuff. I'm not a construction lawyer. And so what I did was I picked up the phone and called Chris Whitney at Pierce Atwood, and I said, we need you. And so Chris handled that. I could handle the TRO. I've been in court. I'm smart. I can do things. But he does that. That's what he does. And so, unfortunately, it was $400 an hour. But this gets to, I think it's Ryan, right? This gets to your question. It's way better money spent on a law firm that does that work, rather than having me and us cobble it together. So, and we won, by the way. The TRO was not granted, and hopefully this will go gently into that good night eventually. But you really need to have subject matter expertise, and sorry to let me bloviate on this, but I will. One role that we have is to help you sometimes find the right lawyer, because it isn't us. And we'll say, you really need someone else for that. Most of the education stuff, whether it's labor or special ed or the general stuff that you guys deal with, that's our sweet spot. But there are occasions when the better play is to get somebody involved whose expertise you can leverage.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Have anything else to ask at this point? Thank you very much. I really appreciate everyone coming out.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you again, guys.
What do I do with this? You guys want this?
The school committee will take a, do you want to do 5? 2-minute break. Thank you.
Have a great night.
Nice meeting you. Thank you.
I'm going to hand this off to these guys then.
I didn't mean to hijack you.
That's like, as long as they.
I'm not giving this to Andrew.
No. No.
You've earned it.
You take it with you, Steve.
Good to see you.
Pleasure.
How are you?
Good to see you, brother. What's going on, man? Hey, nice report.
Oh, good. Are they?
Aubrey's not bad.
If you were playing baseball, you should.
Yes, please take a seat. We're just taking a 2-minute.
Oh, absolutely.
No, Andrew, it's all you. Oh, oh okay. Hi, Aubrey Lombardo.
Aubrey,
Nice
hi.
to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Yeah, thanks for coming out tonight.
Yeah, no problem. We appreciate the invite.
Absolutely.
Very much so.
So weird sitting with us. Yeah, I thought once everybody comes back. I like your socks. Very Michael of them.
That's what Michael said to me this morning. He's like, Andrew, brown shoes and brown
I know,
socks look
it's
cute.
very Michaelish. It's really just
Of course I brought it. I'm prepared. Wouldn't even bring a piece. It worked. I'm
The rest of the committee ready? I know we're sitting up here, but I just want to ask. Alrighty. Well, welcome. Thank you for coming tonight. If you could please introduce yourselves.
Sure. My name is Andrew Henius.
Aubrey Lombardo.
Hi, I'm Deidre Carreño.
Thank you very much.
We have a couple of, well, I should say a list of questions that we'll start off with. Please feel free to use any examples, and in fact, we encourage those. Go into as deep into a subject matter as you'd like. After we're done with these, the rest of the committee will propose any additional questions, just seeing how this conversation goes today.
Sure, thank you.
Thank you. How many school districts do you represent, and how many of your attorneys specialize in education?
So for the actual number, I would refer to our packet, but I believe it's probably close to 15.
Something like that.
Yeah.
You gave us a hard question right off the bat.
Yeah, it's probably about 15 school districts right now. We have one in Connecticut, one in Massachusetts, but the rest are in Rhode Island in some form. We do special ed work for only for a few of those districts. In Providence, we do special ed, and my partner Aubrey does a lot of MLL work there. So not necessarily everything for all those districts. And the second part of your question is easy. Every single one of our attorneys in our office specializes in education law. Every single one. We have a new associate who's been with us just over a year. Prior to that, she did not do education law, so she's just got about a year's experience. The rest of us all have, we counted today, 15 to 25 years representing public school departments in Rhode Island.
Thank you. How many of the districts that you service include special education expertise as well?
I believe we do special ed. For the districts we do everything, we do special ed as well. Okay. Wareham, Mass., Thompson, Connecticut, Westerly, Providence, and Johnston, I think we're just retained as special ed counsel.
And how would the East Providence School District's work be distributed within the firm?
So I would be the lead attorney for the district. Everything would go through me if that's acceptable to you folks. And then the way we've always functioned in our office, we try and have at least one partner backup. In this case, that would be my partner Aubrey. And then, Deidre would probably be the other person that you'd see most frequently. But again, we talk in the office all the time. It's not uncommon. And different areas have different expertise required. We kind of came in, but we heard like the construction questions. Deidre's got a specific expertise in that area, so she handles a lot of that. I've done an awful lot of that too. So if someone else isn't comfortable with that, we may shuffle it that way. But it's always a conversation we would have with the committee first.
Thank you.
Like the MLL. Just the MLL piece specifically, I think would probably be my area, just because that is an area of expertise, and I do handle MLL for Providence, who has obviously the biggest MLL population, and work very closely with RIDE, specifically with respect to the new regulations that are going to be unrolled. So I think for MLL purposes, that would probably be me.
And would it be you then, Andrew, that would be primarily handling, representing the school district before the Labor Relations Board and before a court?
Yes, I mean, like I said, the model, the blueprint we have is that I would be your initial contact if, hearings were required, whether it's at RIDE or the Labor Board or arbitration, that's something that I would be handling. Yep.
And what type of professional development can you offer to the school district?
I'll give that to my professional development expert.
Sure. I think just because we do professional development in all of our districts on a regular basis. For example, tomorrow I'm going to Barrington and doing professional development on 504. We've done a ton of professional development around the state on Title IX. We do special ed professional development all the time. We've done school construction regs, professional development, you name it. I feel like we've done it probably recently. Deidre, I don't know, do you have any others that you can think of we've done recently?
I was going to say, the most recent I've done is 504. And I think we also can tailor any kind of professional development to something particular going on in the district, or tailor it to your policies or your procedures. When you're talking about, one of them is usually the grievance procedure, employee discipline procedures, those types of things. So we can tailor that to whatever the district is in need of.
I think also we try, first when there's a new school committee, we like to do a school committee 101 to just kind of go over, how the law works when you're on a school committee, and what your role is and what the superintendent's role is and how those interface. And then also each year we monitor all of the education legislation in the state, and we usually do a professional development for all of our school districts, and sometimes school committees on whatever the changes are in both federal and state law with respect to any education-related topics.
Yeah, I mean, chances are we have probably 3/4 of a presentation on just about anything you'd be looking for, and then we can just modify it to meet your specific needs.
And what professional development have you and other attorneys in your firm received within the last 2 years about?
I've done Title IX, I've done 504, I've done Special Education 101 in Massachusetts, Connecticut, and here in Rhode Island. I've done truancy, I've done employee investigations and employee discipline.
Can I say? Is this what we've received or what we've done, what we've presented?
You have received.
Okay,
Like,
that's what I thought. I was like, I know he didn't go to a
That's what we've done.
truancy one. Sorry. I think specifically both Mary and Carol and I, our other partner, went to the LRP, which is the National Special Education Conference in Savannah, Georgia, back in April. We've also, I think everyone in our office has taken the Title IX professional development. We took the COSA, which is the Council of School Attorneys Professional Development, which covered a plethora of topics, including 504 and also a variety of special education topics, Title IX update, discipline, manifestation. I'm trying to think what else. I think we all took the COSA. Marianne and I went to LRP. I'm not sure if anybody else has been to anything specific.
The only one I would add is staying current with the Attorney General at the summit and all of the cases that come up with regard to Open Meetings Act and the Access to Public Records Act.
Yeah.
Professional development.
And could you also describe your role in policy development? I know that also differs per, district's needs, but if you can give us different examples, that would be great.
Yeah, sure. So an easy example is Title IX. As I'm sure you know, the Title IX guidance just recently changed. So we put together a model Title IX policy for all of our districts, provided them with the model policy, and then we just tailor it to their specific needs. I think you probably saw in the proposal, that's another way we try and save costs for the districts. If we can do something like that, we charge everyone 1/10 or 1/15 of whatever it is that costs to put that policy together. And then, like I said, just a little extra time to model it to your specific needs. But we do that all the time. I go to the North Kingston Policy Subcommittee meeting 2 times a month, I think. And then all my other clients, if they have a particularly litigious policy or a policy they're concerned about, they send it to our office for review and comment, and we do that as well.
I think, too, it depends on what our clients want. So like Andrew said, North Kingstown, Barrington's another one where they ask us to go to the policy subcommittee meetings. They want legal input right at that opening kind of phase. And then we have other districts that don't want us to do that, and that's fine, too. And so we will review a policy prior to it going to school committee to just make sure that it's legally compliant.
And can you describe your role in collective bargaining negotiations?
Sure. So again, my personal philosophy in this is we really are going to follow the lead of what it is that the school committee is looking to achieve in the negotiations. If you have a good working relationship with whatever the particular union is, and you're not looking to make substantive changes, we're fine with that. If there's a budget concern, we'll tailor whatever it is your needs are to the negotiations. Our style, I'm pretty. I've got a good relationship with most of the unions. I find that the best way to work with them is to, treat them with respect and be open and honest and have, hard but open conversations. And I think that's one of the strengths of our entire firm, quite frankly. I think if you talk to any people that we sit across the table from, they may not like the end result, but usually in negotiations you don't. The old saying, both sides go away not thrilled, but you have a deal. And you're able to work with it, and then you maintain that relationship going forward. So, that's my personal style.
Yeah, I think also because every district that we work with, we work with public school districts. So we deal with the union all the time. We don't really represent schools. We have a handful of private schools, but for the most part, we represent schools where their employees are members of a bargaining unit, and we participate in negotiations. And so we do, we have a good relationship with both NEA and AFT and Council 94. I think everyone there, we respect them, they respect us. We don't always agree. It doesn't mean that we're pushovers, but we have a good long-term relationship where I think they trust us and respect what we say. We feel the same way about the people who we work with there, and I think that helps to, foster a good relationship for our districts.
Yeah, I mean, oftentimes, especially with budgetary concerns, it's difficult. They're looking to increase their salary. You may not have any money to give that increase. So, yelling at each other or stomping your feet doesn't get anything done. You just have unhappy people on both sides. So you have those tough conversations right up front, and you work with them, treat them, as the professionals that they are, and you get to a place where you can get a deal done and move forward.
And can you describe your experience with arbitration cases, please?
Sure. I've done dozens of arbitrations over the years. I think everyone in our office has done arbitrations. That's the process we utilize in the collective bargaining world. Win some, lose some, to be perfectly honest with you. You'll always hear me talk about avoiding arbitration, and that's because it's like anything else. You've now given everything to a third party who has no real interest in East Providence or the union or management. They're going to hear a day's case, render a decision, and walk away. Happy to do that, and I think I'm sure we've won more than we've lost, but I'm a big proponent of have the conversations. Let's try and stay away from arbitration. Let's control our own destiny, and let's get our own outcome. My philosophy has always been, once you're in arbitration, once you're in court, you've now got you get a third person that's going to make a decision for you. You're either going to love it or you're going to hate it. If you can control what that decision is and keep it on your own terms, you'll be much, much better served. But again, we, been through regular arbitration. Aubrey and I know, have done the labor arbitration in Warwick. It's like a 2-year-long, very expensive process. But that's what the committee wanted at that time. So yeah, we're very comfortable with any form of arbitration, litigation, anything like that.
And 2 hypotheticals, of course. The first one is, how would you approach a scenario where a school committee member requests legal to conduct an investigation without the knowledge or consent of the superintendent or other members of the school committee?
Okay. You want me to take that one?
Yeah.
Sure. So, what we tell everybody right from the onset, we work for a majority of the school committee. We don't work for one school committee member. We don't work for the superintendent. So if one school committee member were to say, Andrew, Aubrey, Deidre, we want you to do an investigation, the answer would be no. The answer would be, if you want to put that on here's how you get it on an agenda, have you talk to the chair, put it on the agenda, go through the right process, and if a majority of the folks on the committee decide that an investigation should take place, then there'll be a public vote on it, and we'll conduct an investigation. I think it's about that straightforward. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. And the second hypothetical is, if there is a disagreement on a matter between the superintendent and school committee, are you as legal counsel for the school district capable of remaining neutral, and how would you encourage the parties to move forward?
Yeah, so I don't think we're neutral. We represent the school committee. We don't represent the superintendent. Does that mean that we don't try to foster a good relationship between the superintendent and the school committee? No, but I also think, I know Andrew and I, unfortunately, have been in situations, each of us, where the school committee's decided that they want to part ways with the superintendent, and we've each been through the, separation, termination process with school committees, for a superintendent. Is it something that I love to do? No, but is it a necessary part of the job when a school committee feels as though they're ready to move on, or when then sometimes it's because there's wrongdoing, sometimes it's because they're a bad fit? That's part of the job. We represent the school committee. We're really clear. I'm always very clear, even with my superintendents, no matter how good my relationship is with them. You know that at the end of the day, whatever you're telling me, my allegiance is to the school committee. We work for the school committee. I have been able to, and I think we can all say, I've been able to foster or have very close relationships with superintendents, and also be very firm and clear with them that our relationship is with the school committee, and we're employed by and at the will of the school committee, and There's nothing they say to me that is a private, confidential communication that if the school committee asked me about, that I would not report to the school committee. I think if you're upfront and honest with the superintendent about that, you can still have a very good working relationship with them and also be able to do your job. And our job is to serve the school committee.
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, the transparency part is critical. I'm actually thinking as you were answering that question, I can't remember, from my perspective anyway, a negative relationship I ever had with the superintendent. And, you know, there's been good ones, there's been not great ones, there's been separations, but ultimately, it's kind of an easy ethical question. The school committee hires, that's who our client is, and as long as you let the superintendent know that, and you try and foster that relationship, and you try and foster that communication, and that may mean, with the permission of the chair or the committee, going to the superintendent saying, hey, listen, you're going this way, the committee's going that way. You need to have a conversation. Let's get in the room. Let's at least talk to some of the people and see if we can't get things going the right direction. It's obviously one of our functions is to make sure everybody looks good. And, if the school committee and the superintendent are fighting publicly, that's generally not a good look for the district. So we try and avoid that, but ultimately, we work for the school committee. If there's any question on that.
Yeah.
I'll open this time to the rest of the committee to ask any additional questions at this time.
I have a bunch, but
I was going to say, please feel free to repeat the same questions from before. Those were great questions.
if anyone wants to jump in with questions first, to ask the same question, maybe their version, that'd be fine too. But I can.
You can go ahead.
So thank you very much for coming out here this evening.
Thank you.
Really appreciate the time. And I want to just kind of make sure I'm reading your packet correctly. So, your firm is made up of 7 lawyers?
Yes.
And Andrew, you are the lead for all?
No. We've as we've grown over time, different attorneys have brought in different clients. East Greenwich, West Warwick, Barrington. Those are clients that really, Providence, those are clients that really Aubrey kind of fostered that relationship. She's the lead attorney. I'm the lead attorney on others. My partner, Marianne, is the lead attorney on some others. So it kind of works out nice so that it's not just one person who's completely burdened. But like we said at the onset, for East Providence, it would be me, and then we'd work around anything else.
You would be the representing lead on whether it's coming to a policy committee meeting or it's representing us in the courtroom.
Yep. And like I said, what I'll usually do is if there's an area of expertise that someone at the firm is better at or has more experience or more recent experience than I do, I'd have a conversation with you all and say, hey, listen, truancy court. One of our attorneys, Mike Polak, handles all of our truancy matters, and he's excellent at it. He knows all the judges. He knows all the public defenders. Can I go and do it? Absolutely. But it just makes more. He's already there for 3 or 4 other clients, so it's more cost effective for the clients. But that's so in those kind of situations, MLL. To be honest with you, I wouldn't touch that. Aubrey's done so much work on that. Easy. Construction. I think both Deidre and I, kind of can pass that off back and forth. So it really depends on what the situation is, but I would be the lead that you'd be talking to primarily. Yep.
Yeah, and that's a great segue, and I think maybe, Mr. Ferreira, you can jump in, because I know you asked about the construction part of it, so maybe if you wanted to.
Thank you, Ryan. Just what a construction experience you have in school districts?
Yeah, so I was there when Bristol Warren built, Warwick's trying to build right now. We've done a number of them. Barrington's involved, East Greenwich. So over the years, I got a lot of experience with the AIA contracts. I mean, for anyone who's in the business knows it's really the same form contracts that we see over and over again. There's different, additions and deletions depending on what the relationship is, depending on what the nature of the project is. If you're going to go construction manager or, owner's risk. But generally speaking, I think everybody in the office has worked with those documents.
So I think that we are very comfortable with the RIDE regulations. We have a very good relationship with that office. That said, there are times when things have come up that I feel we have felt like, specifically in Barrington, we've subcontracted a construction attorney through our office to answer more I think, nuanced questions that in areas where we feel a little out of our depth, because our wheelhouse is every single person in our office. Our wheelhouse is public education law. So with the regs, we're really good. If we start getting into areas where we feel uncomfortable, I think, like to Attorney Adams' point, look, we also know we don't want to get into an area that we don't know enough about. So we know enough to go and consult with and subcontract a construction attorney to help us in those areas.
Quickly, just follow up on that, because Tony, can I, about that construction question? So in turn, if we needed you guys, if for some reason a construction issue like the Barrington Auditorium happened here, you guys would be like, we need to go out. We need to go out and get somebody.
Yeah. Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
You would feel comfortable taking it on yourselves.
If there was something, anything, sometimes there's a tax issue.
We're building another school, so I just wanted to.
Yeah, no, and to be to totally transparent, sometimes if it's a regulatory issue, if it's how the process works, if it's, your housing aid, like, I think we're really good in those areas. If we start getting into an area that we feel like, whether it be construction or, like I said, tax is another area where sometimes I'm like, this is, well, I've done a lot of bond stuff at this point, but, sometimes you get into an area where you're like, I know that I don't know the most about this of all the attorneys in the world. And I think that we need somebody else to step in. I think we try to do it in a way that will be most cost effective to you, because let's just be honest, your education lawyer, your day-to-day lawyer is going to be a lot cheaper than the construction attorney, tax attorney, bond attorney that you're going to get. So we've done it, however the school committee wants to do it. Typically our school committees are pretty comfortable saying, hey, is there anyone that you would recommend, or they have someone in mind, and they'll either hire them on their own or they'll sub them through us, and we kind of work in conjunction with them to get whatever we need to get answered, but also to have some oversight to make sure that they're not, going to hit you with bills just to have some billable hours.
How often would you say that you typically attend the school committee meetings of the districts that you represent?
So I think right now, I believe we have all of them covered. That's a struggle, to be very honest with you. It's because every one of not everyone, but I'd say almost every one of our clients is the second or fourth Tuesday of the month. So just to be transparent, I mean, that is one that we have to juggle. That we do have to juggle.
We have had to, so in the past, we've had districts change, West Warwick change their night from a Tuesday to a Wednesday when we were in a tough spot. We have had districts who have more flexibility, and we do have some flexibility in our office, but we like to, I think we like to be at the school committee meetings if the school committee wants us there. I think it's a good way to make sure that we continue to have communication with the school committee and a relationship with them. So it's something that we like to try to work out. It is, Tuesdays at the moment are very difficult because they are like the hot night for school committees. But, we would do our best to try to figure out how to cover.
And for the school committee meetings, unless there's a particular issue that a particular attorney is handling, we like to have continuity with the person that's there as well. It doesn't always work. Deidre and I split Exeter West Greenwich because that's, again, they're 2 Tuesdays, so we're able to do that. But we find a way to make it work. But that's, Tuesday nights are tough.
Do you help school committees stay up to date on changing laws that may impact their school district?
Yeah, I mean, I think as Aubrey said, one of the things we do is we do the annual legislative checks, and we're on a mailing list. RIDE sends us all the most recent decisions. We belong to the Council of School Attorneys, which is a national one, so we get information from them all the time. ATIXA, we get all the Title IX updates and anything like that. So anything like that we get, we're really good about. We'll put something together in the office and disseminate it to all of our clients.
Just because I asked this last time, I'll ask it to you guys as well. What would you say would be your working relationship with the other school districts that you represent?
In terms of with you also? Or like how do you fit into that mix?
Yeah, just like the school districts, like the school committees and the superintendents.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think we have I think you could call anybody on that list, and honestly, when we make the list, we fight over who gets to put their like school committee member or superintendent on the list, because we all want you to call our school committee chair or superintendent so they can say like yes. I think we have a great relationship with them. We have a personal relationship with I mean, not that we knew them before, but over time you grow to have a personal relationship with people who are on school committees and our superintendents. I think, to Andrew's point, we try to be transparent about the fact that we work for the school committee, but we work really well with all of our superintendents and get along with them well.
I think one of the strengths we have is we kind of know our place also. We're not trying to run a district. We're not trying to influence a district. To me, that's one of the fastest ways you get out of this business is, we're there to follow what the majority of the school committee, whatever goals they want to achieve, that's what we're going to help them effectuate, as long as they're ethical and not illegal. So, we're very open about that. We'll work with whoever, we'll work with however, and I think that generally, that's helped foster a good relationship. So, you guys are a committee of 5, 3 may agree to one, 2 may not to the other. So, but we'll always, hey, here's our opinion. We don't give political opinions. We give our legal opinion. We're very clear about that. And then, a majority of the committee can do with that what they want.
I think that's reflected in our client list too. Like if you look at our client list, it's a varied list, very different communities, very different school districts, and that's part of it. I also think in terms of our relationships, part of what we think is a strength is that we do represent so many public school districts, and there is a lot of opportunity for overlap and for cooperation when the law changes, doing a policy or at least like a template of a policy for everyone instead of like reinventing the wheel every time. When a district has a question, we'll usually either send a text to everybody or we're all in the office and we ask like, hey, didn't you have like this happen in one of your districts? And 9 times out of 10, yes, one of us knows, already did the research. It's sitting in in our electronic file and we can like pull it up, recheck it, update it. I think that's a strength of our firm.
You're welcome.
Additional questions?
Regarding your billing, can you explain how you do your billing and how you would get that to the school committee members?
Sure. So, we bill monthly. Everything's itemized. Everything's broken down by the matter. So we have like a general file for each district. We have a special education general file. And then if it's a construction issue, it's the middle school, Riverside Junior High, I almost called it. Riverside Middle School construction issue, 2024. So you'll see the matter, and then all of our time is broken down. It's broken down, I think, to tenths. So you see our rate, you'll see what we spent on it, you'll see which attorney was working on it. Now, with regard to how it gets to the committee, different committees do it differently. Traditionally what we do is our bills go out electronically. So we send them to the superintendent, we send them to wherever the district has directed us for payment purposes, whether it's finance or whatever. And then I think some of them we actually also send to the chair. Some of the committees don't have any interest in our bills. Other ones, if they do, we send them to the committee members. It's really depending on what the committee wants to do. The one thing that we tend to be cautious of as far as the billing is, again, sometimes we're dealing with personnel issues, student issues, that type of thing. So, if it's something that was going to be like a public document, we'd obviously want to just go through and redact any information like that.
Can I say one quick thing? Actually, East Greenwich School Committee and Barrington School Committee, the entire school committee receives our bills every month. It was a request of theirs when we came to them. They wanted to be able to see the bills, and so I don't know if they all look at them every month, but they do all go to them every month. And every once in a while, they'll say something to me like, "Oh, it's helpful because I know what's going on or what you're doing." So we're capable of doing that if that's something that you would want.
Yeah, just a matter of adding everybody to the email that goes out.
Very important why somebody would pay a bill without seeing a bill.
And you guys are ultimately paying the bill. So we have no issue with that.
Bill, don't get me wrong, I know some people that their bills get sent to very wealthy people. Don't look at that. But I don't think there's anybody in this district that sends their bills to, people that just pay them. But in other words, we as the sitting body here that's hiring you, I believe we have the full knowledge and should have the full knowledge of exactly, what we're paying.
I agree completely. And I actually think it benefits us because you'll see the work we're doing. Sometimes you may have a bill that you say, oh my God, you spent X amount of dollars on this, but when you see the time, and then we have a conversation. You say, well, I didn't realize it took all that time, or I didn't realize you had to do all this, or something like that. So we work for you. So if the committee wants to see the bills, the committee gets the bills.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, and sticking with this, I mean, I was wondering, I'm hoping that you can maybe talk a little bit about like your fee structures. Like, what's your hourly rate? Like, do you do like a flat fee? Like, how does that work?
So we bill $200 an hour. That was what was in our proposal. We charge halftime for travel, and we charge a flat rate for attendance at school committee meetings. And it's an up to flat rate. So I think our proposal was $750, but if your meeting was an hour, it would be $200. But if your meeting is 10 hours, it would be $750. With respect to flat fee work, we really don't do any flat fee work. Where we try and make savings for the committee is like we were saying, with our presentations, with our policy work, anything that we can do that benefits a number of clients. You know, we'll usually send an email out to the chair and the superintendent, hey, we're putting together a Title IX policy. Would you like to be a part of that? And we usually get 10, 11, 12 districts, so now you're paying 1/10, 1/12 of whatever the cost would be.
Halftime for travel, so that's like $100 per hour of travel
Yep.
time. So on like a Tuesday night, if you're in multiple districts, traveling to East Providence, we would be paying time in the car while you're traveling from one district to another. What is
From
it?
Providence, well, you might want me at home, so we're not going with the bridge, but, no, we try, and by the way, to be honest with you, I don't do like the bridge or traffic. Like when I go to South Kingston in the summer, I don't charge like a beach traffic rate. We go on MapQuest. It's 30 miles, estimated travel time, 20 minutes each way. We bill 40 minutes.
Yeah.
Maybe we get lucky, maybe we don't.
So
The
travel
bridge
is
is,
strictly from your office to the
Yes,
district,
yep.
not from district to district.
No.
yep, right. So for you folks, the bridge would be a great example. I guarantee you it's not 15 minutes to get here with the current state of the bridge, but if that's what MapQuest tells us, that's what we would bill.
Yeah, honestly, it's taken me sometimes like 2 hours to get to Barrington, and I'm always like a 0.4 for them every time.
Just a...
On that note, can I, have you guys gotten a chance to watch one of our school committee meetings prior to coming here tonight?
I've seen bits and pieces of a few of them. I haven't watched one start to finish. Mm-mm.
I have not. Tuesday nights, they're a hot night for us. Sorry.
Well, lucky for you, we've had them on many nights.
Yeah.
Why do you feel your firm is the best fit for our district, and what unique value can you bring to the table?
So I'll start that one. First, I'll be somewhat selfish. I went to this school, not this school, obviously. Like I said, we were talking earlier, I think the swimming pool was here when I was here. But Waddington to Riverside Junior High at the time to here. My mom was a teacher here. She still lives here. My brother still lives in town. So I have a real connection to East Providence. I truly do. I'm in Rehoboth now, where about half of East Providence goes, as best I can tell. But I would love to represent the district that my mom taught in and that I went to school in and my brothers and sisters did. That means something to me. What I feel that we can bring to you that no one else can is, like we said at the beginning, we've got 6 attorneys in the office. That's all they do. That's all we do. I think Mary Ann has maybe 1 or 2 family law cases. So you'll be getting someone, and with the exception of Laura, with 15 plus years of, no matter who it is in the office, of dealing with education, dealing with public schools. Like we don't do personal injury stuff. We don't do estate work. This is what we do. This is our sole focus. And I don't think that anyone else that you're going to interview can say that that's the firm's sole focus, or that they've got 6 lawyers that's all they do. And so that's really one of our areas of expertise that we really try and hammer on, because this is how we make our living. We know how to do it. We're very good at doing it, quite frankly. We understand how committees work. We understand how public education works. We get it. We have good connections at RIDE. We have good relationships with everyone you're going to deal with, whether it's the construction managers, whether it's AFT, NEA, Council 94. We've dealt with them. Someone at RIDE, Dave Sienko over at the office in special education at RIDE, we've dealt with them. They know us, we know them. And we deal with them consistently. So I think that's really something that is our strength, and I don't think anyone else can really offer.
Yeah, I think the other things that I would say are that, with that 15 years of experience, we really do work as a team. So although Andrew will be your lead, there isn't a day, and we all know what's going on in everyone else's districts, and there's not a day that I don't go into his office and say, hey, this is going on here, like, what do you think about this? Or he doesn't come into my office, or Marianne's not in our office, or Deidre's not in our offices. We're always talking about what's going on in other districts to strategize about the best way forward for our own district. So I think that's a number one. Number two, I don't think there's anyone who is more available or who will make a commitment to be more available to you than us. You might get me at a children's soccer game with my kids in the car sometimes. It could be 11:30 at night and I'm like, not anymore, but putting a baby to bed. Like we might be multitasking, but there is never a time when we will not answer your call within either right then or within moments, even if it's very late at night, if it's on the weekend, if it's early in the morning. I've answered calls in Europe, like when I was away. Andrew never goes on vacation, so you're lucky. But we always have a plan to cover for each other. If Andrew ever does decide to go on a vacation, I will happily be his cover. He's my cover for me when I go on vacation. We are extremely available. There will never be a time when any single member of this committee or any member of central office will not be able to get in touch with us, if not right then, within moments. And if we're in a hearing or something for another client, usually we will text back and say, like, I'm not going to be out until 1:30. Here, call Andrew. I'm texting him right now to let you know that he's calling, or he'll, do the same. So there will always be someone who has expertise, who's not like an associate in the office with a couple years of experience, who will be able to get back to you, who will know and be able to give you a knowledgeable answer right away and real-time advice. We also have good connections with PR firms, so we're able to loop in crisis communications. We know how to deal with all kinds of crises. We've been through almost every kind of crisis in our districts that you could imagine, and we know how to respond to that. And then I think the third thing I would say is the MLL piece. The regs are changing. You, like many districts, have a growing rapidly MLL population, and I do think we're the only firm who has any expertise in multilingual learners. I've been involved in the settlement agreement in Providence since 2016. I am extremely knowledgeable. If you were to ask RIDE, they would say that I'm the only attorney in the state who's knowledgeable about MLLs. I don't say that in a bragging way, just in I feel comfortable in that area, and I don't think anyone else has expertise in that area in the state. Anything to add? Sorry.
No, it's a tough act to follow. No, I would just add that also the combination of all the different districts that we have now and that we have had in the past. I've been there about 2 years. Previously, I represented other districts for about 15 years. So I can also draw on that experience. We didn't have that in any of the districts that we have now, but I dealt with that, a couple years ago, and this is what worked and this is what didn't work. And I think it was Aubrey said earlier, same thing. We get these issues and it's well, I remember we were talking about this with this district. Can you tell me, what you did, how'd that go? If we don't already know, just through conversation. So I think that's just the wealth of experience that we all bring is very helpful to all of our clients.
Thank you. As an example, I was at a school committee meeting last week, I think, and a bidding issue came up, and I was trying to answer the question, and I couldn't remember the statute, and I texted these two right here, and within 2 minutes, Deidre got back to me with the statute, sent it to me, so I looked like a genius, but in reality, it was really Deidre who was helpful enough to get me the information right there on the fly.
You've done that for me too.
Yeah. And we really do try and function that way. It sounds like she's exaggerating, but she's not. I do go to bed 10:30, 11, as I'm getting older here. If you're a late night person, Aubrey's probably, and if you're really early, it's Mary Ann. She's up at 3:30, 4. But honestly, I will respond on weekends. You get my cell number, text, email, call, and that's how we make our living. That's how we keep our clients happy, and that's what we're willing to do.
Can I say one more? Sorry. Just one more quick thing. I think the other thing is we're all parents and we all have school-age children, which with the exception of Marianne, who has school-age grandchildren who she's with every day. But I think that's unique, that oftentimes whatever is going on with a particular student, I'm like, oh, this happened with one of my kids. Or, we all have experiences to draw from. I have a child with a disability. There are other people in our office who have students with IEP or children with IEPs. I think that we all bring our own personal experiences also to the table, and we think about that when we're working, and we try to have that same compassion and not, yes, we're the lawyer, but I think also that we all bring a personal element and recognize that whoever is sitting across from us probably isn't thrilled that they're in a room with an attorney with their child. And we try to bring the appropriate amount of compassion and professionalism when we deal with those situations.
Any additional questions from any of the committee members? Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much. We really
Thank you
appreciate
for,
the
giving
invitation.
us your time today, and we'll be in communication. Thank you. The school committee will take a 2 to 5 minute break. Thank you.
No, we could probably get them. We're just not asking. I'm not
Hi.
Ben, how we doing?
I'm standing up.
Ben?
Then I was all confused, you know?
Oh, we're actually right on schedule too.
That's unusual.
I'm surprised about that.
Yeah.
Not great. Not great.
I'm doing pretty good, yeah.
the rest of the committee ready? Okay.
That differently. It's kind of funny.
Oh, there we go. Here's the mic. Thank you for coming tonight. I'll start off tonight with the list of questions. Please feel free to go in as deep into a subject matter as you would like. Once we're done through these, the committee will pose additional questions that, have either come up earlier in the night or new ones that come up in discussion today with you. So, how many school districts do you represent, and how many of your attorneys specialize in education?
While I answer that question, is it okay if I also give you a brief introduction about our firm? Because there may be some things that you don't know about us that we'd be happy to tell you, and they may not fit into any other question. So we have 12 attorneys. Of those attorneys, 7 specialize or focus substantially in the area of education law, special education law. We have 2 offices. We have an office in Providence and we have an office in Taunton. We have 2 attorneys in Taunton. The rest of the attorneys and all 7 attorneys that do education law are located in Providence together. Our law firm was created in September of 1991. We recently had an anniversary. And at that point, we handled we were a number of attorneys that came together, 6 attorneys, and we had different core areas of the law that we practiced in. And I think it's really relevant, and I hope to pull the strings together because it may give you an appreciation for what we do and how we do it. So we have a comprehensive approach to the law. We handle a lot of areas of the law that most other law firms that specialize in our work don't do, for a reason. One is we were always able to balance different areas of the law with education law. We don't make a ton of money in education law, but there are other areas of the law that kind of subsidize that and work in conjunction with it and creates kind of a synergy. For instance, when I first started to practice law, early part of my practice was business litigation. So I handled many cases in court over the last 40 years. And in that process, I spent a lot of time in bankruptcy court. I spent a lot of time doing foreclosures of properties. I spent a lot of time negotiating business transactions. I spent a lot of time representing banks back when Fleet National Bank was in bank. Some of you may remember that. Our firm was picked back when Governor Sondland was in office to be one of 6 law firms to represent the state of Rhode Island in DEPCO to handle their business litigation and business transactions that related to the liquidation of the number of properties from consolidated credit unions at the time. So that is an area of deep experience that we've had with both myself and other attorneys in our office that lend to you a whole amount of business judgment that you could not otherwise get from different law firms that just do education work. Additionally, we've had experience in construction litigation, real estate transactional work, insolvency work. All these areas tend to increase our ability and our focus on the one area that most of us in our firm really love, which is education law. And it feeds the knowledge and the kind of enhanced representation that we can give all our clients, all 15 of the school districts that we represent right now, and public school districts. And that I think gives a very high quality of business judgment and also of legal representation for them. The climate today that we have, the legal climate in representing school districts, is in the first instance, we may be negotiating a $200 million contract with Gilbane one day. The next day, we may be dealing with the termination of a custodian who stole time because he mismanaged his time clock. The area of laws that an education attorney has to practice in are very varied, very diverse, very often very sophisticated. And that's what we kind of bring to bear, and that's what we bring to you. Another major area of the law that we now practice in is criminal law, and that brings a whole new dynamic to our firm. And I just want Amanda to speak to that for a minute.
Hi, everyone. So just a little bit about my background, because I think I bring a very unique perspective to the world of education law. And I cannot deny the fact that I haven't been doing it a long time. But I don't know if all of you know my total background in terms of what I did before I came to the firm. I worked as a prosecutor in Boston for about 10 and a half, almost 11 years. With that came an experience that's quite different, just in that I was in court constantly. I probably tried, I think it was 60 jury trials in front of a jury in terms of litigation. But another really important aspect of that job and what I did over the course of that time was collaboration with a number of different partners. I was a supervisor for some time in one of the district courts, so I was working with law enforcement, I was working with the judiciary, I was working with clerks, probation department, court officers, and that sort of experience in terms of managing and collaborating and communicating, I think is critical, because one thing I have found, which may or may not be surprising to you guys, is that there are weirdly a lot of parallels between education law and criminal law. And when I say that, I focus on the fact that education law is so diverse, and I think you guys all know this. There's constantly new issues that are coming up, the law is evolving. We could not even predict everything that's gonna come across our plates. And so having the background that I have the ability, a unique and different ability in terms of managing all of those issues. And so I did want to just give you guys a little bit of my background just so that you know what I did prior to the last year and where I've now focused on this.
Also, I wanted to bring Sean Clough here today. Sean's been practicing law with our firm now, 7th year? 7th year. A main focus of Sean's practice also is education law. As I said, we have 7 attorneys in our firm that emphasize education law, but I just wanted to give you an idea of another face and another voice. Sean to quickly tell you the areas that he practices in as well, and how that brings to bear the kind of things that we do.
Yes, good evening, everyone. So I started with the firm 7 years ago, but prior to that, I started my education work as someone in your shoes on a school committee in Smithfield. And I was on that committee from 2012 to 2018 when I stepped down to take a legal role in the judiciary. So that experience, as it pertains to education, was eye-opening and been very helpful as I advise clients in this education realm, namely school committees, because I feel I've been in your shoes to see the decisions that you all have to make for your communities and the difficult decisions you sometimes have to make, and how important it is to get legal advice that one is accurate, but also shows you if there is any wiggle room, what wiggle room you may have to make decisions in the best interest of your community. And that is one area where I feel that I am uniquely positioned to bring advice, whether it's indirectly through the other attorneys in this firm to all of you or directly to you. In addition to that, part of my practice involves business litigation. I represent certain businesses and business disputes, whether it is partnerships that have devolved or construction companies that are bringing breach of contract and mechanics liens type litigation. And that, in terms of whether we're talking school arbitrations, hearings before RIDE, or even appellate hearings in front of the Supreme Court or the Superior Court, having that litigation background is very important when representing a school department, whether it's in front of an arbitrator or in front of a RIDE hearing officer. So those are some of the areas that I practice in that I think bring a lot of value to this district.
Currently, how is the East Providence School District work distributed within the firm?
Currently, Amanda and I are kind of co-lead counsel, so we share cases among each other, and if the district would rather have an attorney with my skill set or Amanda's skill set, given our backgrounds, that's what we lean towards. So we respond to whatever the administration asks us to do.
And currently, Ben, correct me if I'm wrong, are you the primary attorney that will go before the court or the Labor's Relation Board? Is that typically still how that?
Myself, Amanda, or Sean. Again, what we do is different people have different skill sets, and we try to put the puzzle piece together to form a different picture every single time based on the needs of the district. Principally, it would be me, though.
And can you, I know you have already conducted some of these things, but I still have to ask, at least because for the public to know, what type of professional development have you offered, and feel free to also use examples from other districts as well.
Sure, I'd be happy to do that. It could be a fairly long list because professional development is kind of in the DNA of our firm. So what we do frequently is we use professional development internally in our office to develop the capacity of the attorneys, and at the same time to develop the capacity of our school districts. For instance, we actively represent and provide professional development to RISA, the Superintendent's Association, RIASP, the Principals Association, RIASBO, your Business Officers Association. Every single year, one of the marquee events that our firm does, and we've done it for the last 14 years now, or 15 years, is we put on a legal institute. And in the context of that legal institute, we had one, was it last Monday, I think? Was last Monday. 120 of the administrators around the state, regardless of district, superintendents, assistant superintendents, special ed directors, and business officials met, and our group of 7 attorneys went through first a survey of all the law, for instance, and all the new regulations that we have to worry about this year. We gave them strategic advice on statutes. We then went through all the cases from the Rhode Island Supreme Court right down to RIDE. We also provided them with a list of all the outstanding cases with a summary of each and all the statutes with active links so they could look at them and they could understand what they meant. That's one good example of one thing that we do almost every single year for all of our districts. Additionally, we provide information to districts on, God, I can't even tell you, I happen to have a list on the areas that we do. Title IX for administrators, Title IX for employees. In many districts, in the area of Title IX, since we've had multiple changes over the last 4 or 5 years, what we try to do in districts is we go from the janitors right through the superintendent, and we provide different level of professional development directed to particular groups so they can understand the part of the law that's applicable to them. In connection with that, and Sean did a big piece of this, and I'll probably have him talk about it in a minute, we also develop policy in Title IX area and protocols in the Title IX area that are compliant with federal law, and also with the state rendition of what the federal law is going to be. Last year, for the Association of School Principals and for our client districts, we talked about the Educational Accountability Act. We developed a seminar on how to handle crisis situations in schools. We talked about student discipline. We gave presentations on parent rights. As that has become a big issue, parents very often think that their rights have subsumed or taken over the rights of school committees. And we did a survey of the law in the area and provided that to a number of administrators to explain to them where parental rights currently end and where school rights begin and where they have more control. We've done substantial PD sessions on how to do effective investigations. And we start from the lowest level of administrators that would do an investigation right up through the superintendent's office. Sometimes we do that in conjunction with Title IX training, Title VII training, and Title VI training. We've done a substantial amount of that over the last 4 or 5 years. For RIASBO last year, we were asked to come in and do a survey of all the laws that deal with budget issues and budget crises. And we hosted a meeting for them in Warwick, and we went through all those statutes, and we talked about the interplay between all those. And we had a really good discussion with all the business officials, many of whom are new and didn't understand the issues with deficit reduction issues, notification issues, and very often when they put their name on certain kind of documentation, how they're responsible to make sure that there's financial integrity in the district. In terms of Title IX, we've recently completed Title IX trainings in Lincoln, Smithfield, Middletown, Little Compton, Charahoe, Coventry, North Providence, and Blackstone Valley Prep. We've also done recent administrative PD sessions on 504. We did one in your district this year with your administrators. Homeschooling, alternate placements of students, student and staff use of social media, and transgender issues, which is has again become a statewide issue. We've also done, and Amanda did last year for truancy officers. She was called into court, family court, for the Truancy Officers Association, and she talked about student homelessness, residency, and the newest truancy legislation. So I'm sorry it takes so much time in this area, but this is an area that's kind of dear to us because when we develop professional development for our clients, we develop that for ourselves. And that's why we're often asked by different associations to put on PD, because I think most associations know it. When the latest set of regulations in Title IX came down, the Interlocal Trust picked our firm, and Sean in particular, to come in and give a presentation to municipal people who have insurance policies with the trust to explain the implications of Title IX and things they needed to watch out for, and to put on their horizon to start to pay attention to as the regulations come into play. So it's a main part of what we do, and we love it.
Title IX experience. So when we presented in front of that, in front of the trust for all their members, one thing that we did to prepare, and this is something that continues whenever we're preparing to provide professional development to administrators, is it works both ways, right? We also are developing further expertise in those areas. So as it relates to the Title IX specifically, we were fortunate to get on a limited conference call with the Undersecretary of Education for the United States Department of Ed as those regulations were rolling out, and to learn what those changes were and some of the litigation struggles that you've likely heard of in the news that they are now confronting, and how that's going to impact local districts. And that's just one example of how preparing to provide these PDs across the state not only helps those individuals who are receiving the PD, but enhances our representation for all our clients.
And what professional development have you and other attorneys in your firm received within the last 2 years when it comes to education-related topics?
So as I said before, the professional development that we do tends to inform us. So a good example of what Sean just mentioned is he had a PD session with the Undersecretary, Secretary of State's office, Department of Education, and he received professional development on that rollout. We go to national conventions, either every year or every other year. Last year, a number of us went to the LRP convention on special education, and we received professional development along with attorneys around the country that exclusively handle education law. This year, there's a conference called CAUSA, which is School Board Attorneys Association, and we're involved in that starting next week, professional development on statewide issues, federal issues, and that'll deal chiefly with constitutional law issues. Additionally, we do professional development all the time through both the MCLE, which is the Massachusetts analog to the Rhode Island Bar Association for professional development. I can't think of any others right now. Can you?
The Attorney General's office annually has the Access to Public Records and OMA PD. And so at least one, if not multiple attorneys from our firm will attend that on an annual basis just to hear from the Attorney General as to the updates on the OMA and APRA.
And if you can kind of go over the policy development role that your firm has had with our district, and then also what that looks like also in other districts that you represent as well, please.
What we do, I think, with policy development is kind of unique. So since we represent so many school districts, when we have a policy or one of our superintendents tell us we need to develop a policy, or one of our chairs of a policy subcommittee brings up an issue, what we do is we'll develop a policy, but that's not where we stop. So maybe 4 attorneys in our office will touch that policy. They'll look at it, we'll talk about it, we'll kick it around, we'll also develop a protocol. After that, what we do is we ask member districts that are in our network, do you have an interest in that policy? And the ones that do, we send the draft policy out to the superintendents. They all start to collaborate along with us to improve it. So what they give us is boots on the ground experience, especially in the development of a protocol. A good example, that one that we just finished for your district, is an AI policy. So that's in the process right now of superintendents doing a second review on it, as well as their tech people doing a second review on it to make sure that it works, as well as assistant superintendents reviewing it from an academic point of view. That's probably a great example. So when we create a policy, the policy isn't just our legal experience. It's the collective experience, usually of between 5 and 10 superintendents that have touched it and have given their input. We've done a number of policies for you in this area. One is Title IX. We've recently done one on food resource and waste. We did one for you on droning. We've done policies on flags. We've done transgender policies, and we've updated them every couple of years for all our school districts. Virtually every single area that you could think of, we've drafted a policy. And we have a bank, probably at this point, about 75 or 80 different policies for school districts. Frequently, they just contact us, and they say, do you have a policy from on a particular topic? And we'll send them a draft of what they have, of what we have for their review. We've recently done SIT policies. We just completed one for Tiverton within the last couple of weeks. We've done procurement policies. A lot of districts we were finding in the business office have developed shortcuts in terms of procurement. So we've gone through a lot of our districts' policies and their protocols to make sure that they pretty strictly comply with the law. Over time, administrators sometimes develop law as LORE instead of LAW, and they start to develop their own protocols, and they could depart from the requirements of the law. We find out about it when they have a problem, like a bidding issue. So before that happens, we proactively like to share, if we've developed a policy in an area, with everyone that would be impacted by that, and ask them to review it and see if it's relevant to them. And to just do a quick segue into costs, one of the ways we're able to cut costs among all our districts in terms of efficiency of legal fees, in a situation like this, we will share the cost of development of a policy among anywhere from 3 to 5 to 10, in some cases 15 different districts. So you get the benefit of everybody's knowledge, and this school district gets the benefit from a cost sharing with all the other districts that participated. Yes.
Just kind of specific to East Providence, just so you guys know, I had the opportunity, which I think you guys remember, working on the code of conduct policy. And I wanted to at least just highlight that, because I think what was really important about how that worked for this district is that we re-engaged the sort of subcommittee and the importance of that, and the importance of communication between us and the committee with respect to policies and what should be incorporated. We also started on the ground level. We met with administrators. We wanted to make sure that it was legally compliant, but also functional. And I think that was an important aspect in terms of that policy development. And I wanted to highlight that because I think Ben talked a lot about, we have substantial database and tons of policies, but it's also so important for the committee to be engaged as much as you want to be. And so moving forward, we would love to be able to collaborate more. I think we've had some conversations in the past about being more proactive, identifying policies that maybe need to be slightly improved or changed. And that's something that we are willing, and to your point, Chairwoman, in terms of other districts, it varies vastly in terms of how districts and different committees handle policy development. And it's something that we have experience in a lot of different ways in terms of being more proactive or being more responsive to changes in the law. But we're willing to do whatever the committee wants to do, and I kind of wanted to just highlight that in terms of moving forward and collaborating.
And then also, if have many up here have seen how the role looks like in East Providence when participating in collective bargaining negotiations, but if you can just kind of give a summary for those who are listening, and then also, if again, feel free to go into what works for other districts too.
So I'm not sure I understand your question.
If you could describe the role of the firm in collective bargaining negotiations, what that looks like.
Depending on the district, the role looks different. So, excuse me. First of all, we always encourage the districts to go through a process, and the process usually is the same regardless of the extent of our involvement. So that starts really with two pieces. One is, what are the school committee's goals when we go into negotiation? The second is, what are all the administration's goals and pain points regarding a collective bargaining contract? Identifying those, bringing those to the school committee, and then letting the school committee set the priorities for the district in terms of what has to be negotiated and how. From that point, negotiations look different depending on the committee, depending on the culture of the community, depending on the relationship that the school committee and the administration happens to have with a given union. I just completed negotiations for, well, almost, so I probably shouldn't even say it's public, within a whisker in North Providence today in 2 meetings. And for TAs. And in that contract, we were able to achieve that two meetings because the chair and the school committee met with the superintendent and I, gave us a range of parameters, what needed to be negotiated. The superintendent had already identified the language changes that needed to be made in the contract. We were able to have quick but robust meetings, and it was just he and I and the business official, and the contract was done. Now, that doesn't always happen that way. A lot of times, either the school committee wants to have a more meaningful role in negotiations, so they would assign 1 or 2 or 3 or more people. And sometimes they would come to all the strategy sessions, sometimes not. Usually, members of our firm serve as a chief negotiator one of us because we've had so much experience in negotiations across districts. And we know so much about the people at the other side of the table, for better or for worse on both sides, that we know how to get to a contract within the time period that you have and with the parameters that you set. So we are willing, in any scenario, to act as chief negotiator, just provide guidance, just stand by and watch. In some districts, we just provide contract language. So it varies as much as people vary. But we can make it successful in whatever scenario the school committee would like.
And if you could also describe your experience with arbitration cases, our district or others as well.
So because I've practiced in this area for so long, 37 years in education law, I've probably had about 50, 60 different kind of arbitration cases. And those cases have kind of covered the gamut of whatever you can arbitrate, from interest arbitration in terms of reacting to a change in regulation, which would require more teacher time, and how you negotiate that, and if it fails, how you get in front of an arbitrator and have an arbitrator make final decisions on the impact of that, which is called impact arbitration. Teacher termination cases, I probably can't even count the number of teacher termination cases that we've had, or discipline cases, and also contract interpretation cases. They're just very numerous, and they've been across all the districts that we've represented all the time. But I have to tell you, given the number of arbitrations that we've had, what's more important is the number of arbitrations that the firm hasn't had that could have turned into arbitrations. And it's another way that we've developed cost containment, and that is just given the experience of all the attorneys in the office that have done this kind of work, we can tell where a case is going to go. We can tell whether you're going to be successful or not, and we can give you good strategic advice, and I think we do, on when you need to settle a case and how you need to settle that case. And I think that's the area where we really shine, the number of grievances that get resolved without going to arbitration, the number of arbitrations that we've handled that actually get mediated rather than arbitrated and resolved in a manner that is respectful. It's very infrequent that we've handled an arbitration case where the other side has gone away unsatisfied or felt like they were beaten, because we found a way to make both sides feel comfortable with the resolution of the case, and that's what we strive to do in every single case, from termination, which are usually very difficult, right down to contract language interpretations.
Lastly, we only have 2 hypotheticals left on this list. These were the same ones asked, again, to the other firms that came up before us today. So how would you approach a scenario where a school committee member requests legal to conduct an investigation without the knowledge or consent of the superintendent or other members of the school committee?
State law is very clear that individual school committee members don't have that authority. So that would not be legally possible to do. If it were a case where a school committee member mentioned an illegality that an administrator or another school committee person was engaging in, we'd advise them to go to the correct enforcement authority if they felt they wanted to pursue something. An open meetings violation if they felt they wanted to do that, a open records violation, or to the police, the state police or local police. And we've had circumstances where that's happened in the past, not in this district ever. But that's how we've handled those. What I've always encouraged individual school committee members to do when they come to me with a problem that they have is first bring it to the school committee, because the only way an individual member can have authority is when a majority of the school committee has empowered that authority or that action. So that's the way we would proceed.
And if there is a disagreement on a matter between the superintendent and school committee, as legal counsel for the East Providence School Department, are you capable of remaining neutral, and how would you encourage the parties to move forward?
I'm going to answer the question in 2 parts. First, we're not neutral. we know who we represent. We represent the majority of the school committee. You hire us, you fire us, you give us direction, we give you legal counsel. The major aspect of our job, however, is we intersect with your administration. Your administration by state statute has the authority to administer and run the district. So we do a lot of work with them all the time. So frequently what happens, and I've seen it in many districts, ones that we represent and not, is superintendent or an attorney will come and tell the school committee what the law is. And the school committee may not be happy with that because that may not be in line with a particular goal that they have. Our job always has been, and I believe whenever we've represented you and given you legal advice, is to tell you what the law is, not necessarily to be on a side. So a superintendent may be right in terms of what the law is, and we'll tell you that, or may be wrong, and we'll tell you that. And when there's gray area and the school committee can enforce power that the superintendent isn't interested in or doesn't like, we will tell you that too. And we will give you that empowerment to be able to take appropriate action. And that's how we usually handle that situation. Very few circumstances that's really has come up, not in this district, but in other districts. And usually when there is good communication between the three different bodies, the school committee, or legal counsel, and the superintendent, that doesn't come up. It all begins with communication and setting goals for the superintendent and legal counsel. One of the things I think we could benefit from in this district, it would be very helpful to us in our representation of you, is coming to your executive sessions. So now if there's a problem and the superintendent calls us in or the chair calls us in, we'll come and we'll see you and we'll talk to you and we'll give you legal advice when we think it's, and when you think it's appropriate. But most of the districts that we're in, we at least go to all the executive sessions. And I know former legal counsel before us used to go to all your meetings. And that changed, I think, when we came on board. And that was a decision that committee made. But I think it would be very beneficial if you had us at least come to all your executive sessions and probably to some of your more important public sessions, and we could help guide you and give you information and strategy, and it would be very beneficial. And it would increase communication substantially.
Thank you. At this time, I'll open the floor up to the rest of the committee to ask any additional questions.
Sure. Thank you very much for coming out this evening and for your time for being here. Popcorn questions just based on thinking about the 14 districts in Rhode Island that your firm represents. Ben, as the lead Providence, how many of those districts are you also
Including East Providence, 5.
And then outside of Amanda and Sean, again, thank you for being here. Are there any other attorneys, like from your
Oh, absolutely. Funny thing, in our firm, what we do for lunch every day, besides eating lunch, is we talk about all our cases. So most of the attorneys that do education law in our firm know about, because usually there are funny stories and curlicues and learning opportunities in cases. People are messy and they do funny things all the time. And that, for us, that makes cases interesting and exciting, and it creates different areas of the law. So generally, multiple attorneys in our firm know about the status of cases and have a pretty good idea of what's happening in all our cases. As I know all the cases in our firm, Amanda does, and Sean does. So there's virtually always somebody available to handle a matter if it comes up and the three of us aren't available. But it's pretty infrequent that one of us wouldn't be available, to be honest. I can't think of a time when none of us were available to address any issue from any district.
Yeah, I mean, and then like just thinking about like if days or the frequency of those meetings were to either increase or decrease, how would that affect your ability to be present at all?
We would do it.
We make it work. The good thing about school committee meetings is that they're scheduled well in advance, right? So it's really just about managing all of our schedules. We do a pretty good job of it. For example, I go to pretty much almost, I would say 90% to 100% of Cranston's meetings. Sean goes to a couple districts himself, but there's times where we have conflict and then we communicate and someone covers. I can't tell you that there's a time that we wouldn't have coverage. Again, we have advance notice, which is a nice thing, so that we can make it work.
Yeah, right on. And you know, I appreciate you answered a lot of questions I've had, and so kind of just lastly wanted to just follow up in terms about like your hourly rate, and then maybe if you could talk a little bit about like your fee structures.
We have three basic kind of fee structures. But first of all, our hourly rate is a standard rate. We don't do a blended rate because all the attorneys that do your work have a substantial amount of experience. That hourly rate is not high. As I mentioned at the front end, if we had to live on just our firm on the hourly rate and the revenue that we generate just from education law, we probably couldn't do it, or we all would have to change our lifestyles substantially. So we all do different areas of law, and we have different attorneys that do different areas of the law, some pretty esoteric, which we could talk about someday. The rate is just moderate. I believe that we quoted $115 an hour as our basic rate, and a higher rate for litigation and special education and arbitration and negotiations, because those usually require some special skills, so we attach some extra value to that. Additionally, we offer flat fees, which we're happy to negotiate with the committee to come to school committee meetings. And then we do sometimes value-based billing. Some attorneys call it flat fee billing for different projects. So a good example of what we do, and it's seamless to you guys, is with policies. We'll offer that at a flat fee. We'll kind of figure out how many hours it's going to take to put a good policy together and go through that whole process that I explained to before. And then we kind of divvy it up among all the districts, and we assign districts a fee. So there may be a flat fee for a policy of like $500. Well, you've actually, if you had an individual attorney put that together, it would probably cost you $1,500 or $2,500 in terms of value and cost. We try to do the same thing for our professional development. There are a number of districts that we do retreats for. We try to line up all the topics so we don't have to develop the areas that our clients are interested in. So we find out early on from our superintendents what topics are important to them, and we try to create flat fees for that time as well. We also, internally, a lot of time we assign to what we call Admin 1, or client development time. We don't charge the district for that, a substantial amount of that time at all. Attending school committee meetings, we negotiate a flat fee, depending on the frequency and about how long it's going to be. And that is going to depend more on you and what your needs are and about how often you'd need us. And we come up with something that is agreeable to both sides. The important thing with a fee, and it's ingrained kind of in our firm, we have to make enough money to earn a living and to accommodate the risk that we take on when we give legal advice and pay for our overhead and run our business and pay our staff. You have to get good value for that money or it doesn't work. So the amount that we offer, we think, provides really good value among all our clients. And we do the same thing with flat fee. That's going to be a process where we just have to talk about it and see how it shakes out. But we can come up with something that's fair that works for you.
I just want to make sure I heard you correctly. Did you say
2? Did I say 1?
You did.
I'm sorry.
I was about to.
You weren't close enough to kick me. I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you.
But I do, on fees, there's one point I gave you some data which I had received actually from Joel. when he inquired at our legal fees a while ago, and he wanted to do a survey of our legal fees and how much money we've saved the district. I was kind of shocked when I put all the figures together. I think we've saved you more than a fair amount of money in terms of the efficiency of our legal fees over prior counsel that you had in the past. And those were basically in ancient dollars. That's going back to 2016 and to 2012. When you compare that to what we've charged you per year from 2017 forward, our fees have been probably savings in the order of over $100,000 a year to the district. So multiply that times the 7 years that we've represented you. I think that demonstrates that our firm can provide very efficient, high-quality legal service. We do it all day, every day. It's because it's what we love in an area. It's kind of what we live and breathe, or at least 7 of us do. Thank you.
Any additional questions from the rest of the committee members?
How would you inform us, doing a better job informing us, and what is
Our bill schedule is contained in our proposal. It's the base fee is $215 an hour.
No, but I apologize if I'm saying, like, at each month, how do you break that down, by the hour, what case and stuff like that?
I think, correct me if I'm wrong, are you asking like what the bills look like?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so what we do is we have a pretty sophisticated time and billing system. Unfortunately, one of the things that all attorneys do, and I'm sure the other firms mentioned it too, is we provide extremely detailed bills by case, and we keep track of our time, unfortunately, by .1, which is basically every 6 minutes. So all day, every day, it's almost like factory work in terms of having to keep in mind the time that you spend for a client in billing. Billing is very transparent. We send you very detailed bills. All you have to do is ask for them, to look at them, and we provide you summaries. We could also, if you want, provide you budgeting, and we could talk about budgeting at front end of cases to figure out how much money you would want to spend on a particular case and what your goals are. So we provide you with an enormous amount of data, which I think is why your business official was able to generate cost savings in terms of the cases. We have an invoice for every single matter that we open, and every matter that we open is for every individual case. We do have a general file for when we bill and respond to general questions, but typically we open up a case for any matter of significance, so you can keep track of how much that matter cost. And if you look through the description, why we charged you that money. Also, we identify any costs that we charge to you.
Now, going forwards, would you have sending that to the chairperson?
Of course not.
Get that?
No, those are your bills. Those are your bills. You should look at them just like you should look at any other bill that you vote on. No issue at all with that.
Thank you.
The other thing that I think we'd benefit from, and the chair asked me to do it a couple of months ago, was to come before the committee and give a summary of all the cases. I think we should agree to do that for the new committee, perhaps on a quarterly basis or more frequently if you'd like, and we could tell you the status of cases and what's going on and what our involvement in cases are. There have been situations where I think the committee assumed that we were involved in a case and we weren't, or the extent of our involvement in a case. And that might enable communication a lot better between the administration, the school committee, and us.
Thank you.
Additional questions from the committee?
Said for Cranston, you attend like 90% of their just general school committee meetings just to what do you generally charge as a fee just to like attend and watch our meetings, assuming like normally that there wouldn't be any like extensive involvement aside from just watching?
So just to clarify, they typically have executive session almost every meeting, which is what I would attend and participate in. In terms of staying for the meeting, it's more discretionary on the chair's part in terms of whether they think there's a substantial issue on the agenda that legal could maybe be there to assist. So there's not really a scenario where we're necessarily just hanging out observing. That being said, I think to Ben's point earlier, certain districts, we do just charge our hourly rates. Other districts, we may negotiate some sort of flat fee agreement. Again, it really is dependent on what the committee's needs are, what their desires are in terms of the framework for what that would look like. You're welcome.
So I asked the other people that came, and I'm going to ask you, it's going to sound stupid, but I asked everyone if they had seen one of our school committee meetings.
Have.
I just thought it was a relevant question. Guess it wasn't tonight. Why do you feel your firm is the best fit for our district, and what unique value can you provide for our district?
Hopefully a lot of things that I identified kind of modeled or explained
When you brought up your first thing this,
some of the unique things that we do that I don't believe any other law firm in the state has done, and the kinds and the quality of the experience that we have. But more important than that, over the last 7 years with us representing you, we've had an opportunity to sit through 3 school committees, basically, and watch the school committee and the district grow. For instance, one of the most exciting things for us was to be involved in the multiple transactions and interchanges with Gilbane, with your OPM, and to see the development and the fruition of this big, beautiful building. And along with it, probably the pride in this district that everybody has, not just the school committee, when you see the changes and the movement and the progressive actions that have happened here. But just as important with your administrators, your community, and us. And we feel that in that way, we've kind of, not going to say fell in love, but we've grown in love with your community and the kind of people here and the administrators. You have a wonderful school committee, but more importantly, you have one of the best administrative teams in the state. They're very dynamic, they're very progressive, they have a ton of energy, and they want to move the district forward. And to be able to participate in that and to help move the ball forward, even if it's only a little bit, for us it kind of makes our day as attorneys who love education law. And for that reason, we'd love to be able to continue forward with that, because we love everything that you do here and the way that you do it. Would you like to add anything?
I'll just chime in a little, because again, recognizing that I have minimal experience in the education world, there was something that stood out, and I've been in a lot of districts, but with East Providence specifically, and it was, this is corny, but the townie pride and just the sort of dedication to the district that comes from not just the committee, but the community as well. I've had an opportunity working with your district to meet administrators, teachers, parents, students, whether it's in the special education world or in other contexts, and there is a dedication that exists. And so why are we a good fit for you guys? We have that same level of dedication to education law in a bigger, more general way, but also to the committee. We want everybody to be successful in this district. And so I think that we can match the energy of the district, and it's unique. I will tell you that. I haven't been doing this forever, but I've met a lot of people and seen a lot of things, and there's something unique and special about East Providence, and I do think that our firm's a good fit. We have dynamic collaboration between attorneys with a lot of different backgrounds, and we really do look forward to moving forward, continuing to open lines of communication, and just make everything in the district better.
Yeah. Any additional questions from the committee? Thank you. Oh,
Just gonna ask the same question about construction.
definitely.
And just what background you have in construction law?
So given the amount of construction that's happened over the last 10 years, a substantial amount in it. And I think that's probably best identified. You know, we negotiated that contract with Gilbane. We spent a lot of time putting that contract together. You had 2 problems with Gilbane that we were involved in. One was the buckling of the sidewalks and the light stanchion, and the other one was some of your HVAC control systems. And based on the way the language was set up and the experts that the district brought in to be able to identify those and the presentations that we made to Gilbane, Both of those were settled in a relatively easy way. A lot of that was because of the expertise that we developed in how those very sophisticated AIA contracts come together and what needs to come out of them and what needs to be changed. I really don't think that there are many school districts, if not law firms, that have the same level of expertise that we've developed because we've been through so many of them. Actually, we end up teaching OPMs problems in their contracts that they should really know about, but they just haven't identified them because they haven't had the issues yet. We've done a lot of professional development in that area. On the construction end, for most construction contracts, it's not magic because we've all handled construction litigation in our firm. If something gets sophisticated, we have relationships with other firms where attorneys just handle construction law, but we haven't met one of those cases yet, to be honest with you. We're fully capable in construction arbitration cases to handle it from beginning to end, to get you where you need to be, and to tell you if we see issues and we need to settle the case, or the case needs to be resolved some other way. So we do have a substantial amount of experience in the area. Thank you.
Additional questions? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you again for coming here tonight.
Is the meeting just going to finish up now?
The school committee will take a 2 to 5 minute break.
Okay, thank you.
Well, we didn't take a. The committee all set to restart discussion? All right. Next item, please.
Discussion items?
So we have legal services to discuss following the interviews, again, with Barton Gilman, Henius Carroll, Lombardo, and Brennan Scungio and Cressage. Does the committee, do we want to start off with one firm and kind of move through the list that way? Or do you guys want to kind of just jump around on, based on answers? Up to you guys. We can go by firm, that's fine too. So with Barton Gilman, what are the committee's thoughts on their performance and answers for tonight? Thought one of the areas where they kind of stuck out was their
Charter. There you go. But you knew that I was going to say that. I mean, no one was talking, so I'm just going to talk.
No, please,
Let's just get
please
the
go ahead.
conversation started.
No,
It's
definitely.
8:30. And they didn't watch any school committee meetings. Just come prepared. Like, I think they should have. That was me. And they were probably watching. Again, I'm going to just go through what I thought. Charter schools, a lot of charter schools, however, very, very professional. Professional development, all of them have to have the same professional development. Very good. I thought their answers were great for the hypotheticals, but again, the first one had to be legal. You have to be good at that. I think they were very nice, but charter schools, I'm out. Next.
They were very polished. There's a lot of litigation experience. I think there's a benefit of not working with 12, 10.
Just a little bit closer.
The benefit of only working with 3 public schools is there's potential for more attention and time and focus on your district solely. To be kind of just loose in this conversation, like they felt very startup firm to me, and not that they're like a brand new firm, but when the way they were talking about how they kind of started by like piecemealing together their education services, right, providing special education services, just special education for Providence, gaining years of experience that way, and then growing into like having like that the whole like education like department on their firm. I think additionally, the 3 representatives here tonight all have hands-on educational experience, which I think it was a great thing to bring to the table.
Again, I just want to say I feel really weird doing this in public. I sat on the school committee when we did it last time, and we didn't do it in public. It's like when we do administration, when we hire superintendents or hire administrators or hire teachers, when we hire people, we usually do this in private, and we talk about it in private. I feel really weird talking about this in public. I want to put that on the record because I feel like that's not how we do things here. I know about transparency, but transparency is them speaking about this and doing the interviews in public, but us deciding what we want, this is us. These lawyers are for the school committee. We are the ones that decide who works for us. We don't need to do this in public because it's for us. I just feel this is odd. Just want that to be known.
So looking back at those minutes from last time, we had different legal that also gave us advice on how to prepare those minutes. So the primary topic of that executive session was performance-based, and rightfully so. During that period, it was very much a concern about that previous law firm's performance, I think. Whereas here, it's more so just discussing, who is the right fit for us as a group, and for the district as a whole as well. So that was the mindset of, having these discussions up in public so that the community kind of knows like the extensiveness and thought that goes into it, from the committee. But I understand what you're saying too, though. It is very strange. I understand.
Committee.
Yeah.
We are hiring them for us to represent us.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Because I know we're hiring them for us, but we're paying them with taxpayers' money. So I see no issue going behind closed doors to figure out where we want to go with this. I understand it's our legal team going forwards, but at the end of the day, it's the taxpayers' money that's going to pay whichever firm we choose. So They have no problem coming in front of us, you know, presenting themselves, all three true professionals, many, many years in the education world. I have no problem sitting here evaluating them, which I did. I have my opinion. I feel very comfortable. I just think this is part of open and honest government. They can come here and speak in front of us without no issue. We should be able to speak here. I wish the other firms were here. That's just how I am. I was raised like that. I don't like going on closed doors. If I got something to say, I'm proud to say it, especially when it's not my money that's being discussed, because at the end of the day, we may be keeping them, they may be going, but at the end of the day, it's taxpayers' money that's going to pay the next law firm. So to go behind closed doors and discuss that, my personal opinion is I disagree with that. Open, honest government, it can't get no more open and honest than what we're doing now. So to hide this, I disagree with it. Thank you.
I didn't say hide. I wasn't talking about hiding it. I just feel it would have been appropriate.
I think it's a great opportunity, Tony, to talk about what your thoughts are then on Barton Gilman.
Thoughts on Barton and Gilman? I just looked at them. I added up all the years of education. They had 56 years, which is a little higher than everybody else. I like the idea that they only did 5 districts in the state that they fell across the board with, where the other guys were at 6. And well, we'll get over the other ones when they go. I don't want to get into that, their portion with them. Throughout the district, they both came up, well, they came up with 2 stars. For the first hypothetical, I gave them 1 star, and the second one, I gave them 1.5 stars based on the presentation that I listened to and where they went with on that there.
I guess I'll just say with Bartman, just being blunt, like for example, one of the positives was the amount of attorneys they have that specialize in education work, but other than that, there wasn't really much that stuck out with me that I thought that they do better in comparison to the other 2 firms that we had here tonight, so.
I'll add that of what they introduced in their packet, I did like the legislative summary that they had, and propose other summaries. I know they weren't the only ones that mentioned it, but they were talking about them first. So I did like how they've provided summaries that are easily digestible, I think, for school committees to kind of have an idea of what's happening outside of just East Providence, or like, or outside of just, RIDE, but what's happening at the state as well. So I thought that was an interesting thing for them to also add in their packet that I thought, I did want to make it a note of it because it did stick out, so. Any other additional comments about Barton Gilman? We can move on to Hanius, Carroll, and Lombardo. I'll open up the floor to the committee for any comments or observations from tonight. I thought their extensive list of schools, for example, was a nice thing to see. A lot of it, of course, was public schools, which is what we love to see, and it's good to know that they have an experience between large, public schools as well as smaller ones as well. The needs between, varying sizes of schools is necessary, but especially because East Providence is such a large school district, that's I think important to note. As well as their, I think some words that they used were very interesting as well, like they really lead with, collaborating with different parties, and that seems to kind of filter through different, responsibilities, whether it's negotiating, whether it's working with school committees. I think they really hit that point very clearly throughout their interview that I really appreciated. I think, as many of us know, that is very essential for a school committee to be productive, as well as for a school district to also be productive as well, to, you know, adjust and change to, you know, new laws or regulations, or to adjust to any, you know, incidences that may come up, for example. So I thought that was of note.
Yeah, I mean, in a way, like, their firm is very similar to, you know, the firm that we're currently working with, right? They are representing about 12 districts throughout the state, public school districts, a handful of only special education services. You know, something that was noteworthy was the fact that the 6 out of 7 of their attorneys, all they do is education law. You know, and I think comparing that back to Barton Gilman, you know, one of the something noteworthy from Barton Gilman was the fact that they, you know, like I said, like kind of like that startup vibe in a way. However, they have their firm is extremely large, right, regionally, Pennsylvania to New York, to New Jersey, to neighboring New England states, and although they're not representing a lot of districts, they have a lot of like legal advice opportunities, right? There's a huge range for that feedback to come in. You know, the Andrew Hanius, you know, one of the benefits there is really just about like that's all they do, right? Is education. And however, like, you know, skipping ahead to you know, Ben Scungio's firm, that firm, 6 of their attorneys focus on education law out of the 12. However, as was noted, you know, the other attorneys in their firm, like they're focusing in construction law, they're focusing in business law, and they're able to take that experience and apply it to like the different areas where it's applicable in education. You know, so I think there's 3 different, you know, some different perspectives. There's a lot to digest, and not necessarily like, you know, being forward, you know, it's a lot to digest one interview, let alone 3, and then just like kind of discuss. So it's like, you know, just happy to hear some other thoughts, but. You know, I think with sticking with kind of Andrew Hanius' firm, again, there was that similar to Barton Gilman, right, where the 3 representatives here this evening were all at one point teachers. You know, Andrew Hanius' firm, the 3 representatives here all have school-age children, right? So there's like that kind of relatability factor in terms of like the educational world on a larger scope.
And I'll just say I liked.
Good, Max.
I'll just say I like their fee structure and billing structure. I liked their the amount of background that they had in education, and I liked the knowledge that they brought to the table with MLL and settling negotiations.
Just to kind of repeat what you just said, Max, the MLL, that was the one really emphasized the expertise on that. So I thought that also kind of stuck out with that, especially knowing that the money that the state allocates for each school district to have for MLL is exclusively to that. So it does have different requirements for the school district to follow. So that's why that part stuck out too as well, that we know that requires additional knowledge and work, besides the education part, the finance part as well.
To follow up with that, I gave them, just the way that I score, I gave them 4 scores and 100% on that, the MLL. I think that was very, very important. And then just going back a little bit, Ryan, where you said where they got such a big network, I love, you know, anybody that has a big network, because early,
Barton Gilman?
Yeah, the middle of last week, yes, you know, on that. But everybody just brought some great things. But because like just with Massachusetts last week, they came in 2nd in the country with the bullying policy and stuff. So to be able to have companies that can interact with other companies like that, I think is just a great thing. Even in my personal, you know, business, we interact, you know, different companies throughout the country with the last state to get new tools. But anybody that's got that type of network, and I just think brings a lot to the table. where you can get on the phone, call neighboring communities, see where they're doing different things, and they could bring that to us on that. But it just, I think they were all decent companies. There's no denying that.
So, on the like the MLL thing kind of threw me because I love the fact that she is the best in the business, but I mean, I think we have the best in the business. But Uniza. So, I didn't know we had issues with MLL and that we need a lawyer for that. I didn't, so I mean, I love that she has that, but I didn't know we had an issue with that in our district, so I don't think that's not my seller on that. I think that we're good on that point. They remind me of Ben's group, and they're from Ben's group. I mean, they all work there. They're very familiar, you know. They seem very nice. I like their style. They looked like they were open people. They would always be available. I liked that. You know, obviously they want to come to all the meetings at $7.50 a pop. That could be expensive for taxpayers. $7.50 a month, $7.50 every meeting. That can get pretty expensive. But I mean, they're good. I mean, I liked them.
Just to piggyback, I thought it was interesting too that they mentioned that they work with PR firms.
Yeah, I did like that too. I just hope, but I didn't like why they did. They're like crisis management.
Yeah, but that's been something that I feel cool. Like the school committee has, unfortunately, and again, we won't get into the details really of what those cases have been, but we have discussed previously, like, okay, you know, sometimes there are things that come up. It'd be nice to have the guidance of, you know, a PR person. Of course, being school department, our finances are, you know, strict enough that we can't have one on retainer, but having someone, a firm that's able to access those expertise and guidance, I think would be a huge help, I think. Especially with seeing how incidences happen unexpectedly throughout the state and on the national level too. It doesn't hurt to have that extra help there, knowing that, you know, you can have that extra help. So.
Yeah, I mean, and then just like kind of skipping ahead, like, you know, to like, you know, Mr. Scungio's firm, you know, talking about some of the things that are outliers outside of the fact that, you know, the other half of the firm outside of education is working with like all different other aspects of law, right? And so that could be looked at as a benefit. I think that there's also benefit in terms of, I mean, obviously financial benefits, right? This is something that is a checks and balances, and is something that, you know, ensuring like being financially responsible is a big part of this. And, you know, the folks from Mr. Scungio's firm were very transparent, and I feel like they have been in terms of what their rates are and what our district and our school committee gets charged with. You know, the firsthand accounts of, you know, and I think there were other firms too that noted in terms of, and I thought the other two firms too, they were very honest. Folks were, the first question about construction law, the very first group, Barton Gilman, right off the bat was this: no, like, we don't, you know, we were going to find you the best person, but that's not us. That's a very honest answer, and it's not an easy answer to give. And I felt like the folks from Mr. Hanius's group also like had a similar answer, you know, and they kind of, it took them a little longer to get to that answer, but they finished with that answer of like, well, we have someone who does construction law, but if it comes down to like an example like Ms. Boucher mentioned, they're going to find like outside sources, which is great. You know, the folks from Mr. Scungio's firm, you know, we're transparent about the 10 years of experience that they have firsthand, like not only just in their firm, but in this district, you know. And I think that there's a little bit of an underlining theme, you know, throughout this process of communication. And I think that it's not necessarily just, I think that some folks, and myself included in all areas, have this expectation that communication is going to fall in their lap, no matter what. And so if folks aren't asking and they're not receiving communication, it's hard to just say like, oh, the communication's poor because questions aren't being asked, right? Or you're not asking the right people. And I think that, you know, if anything, you know, potentially having legal be at more executive sessions, more school committee meetings when there's an agenda that would warrant that attendance, you know, but reaching out and ensuring that whoever is representing our school committee, every person on the school committee feels that they can just reach out to legal if they need to because they have a question that popped in their mind, right? And like Mr. Hanius's firm was very adamant, like they can take phone calls on the practice field at, you know, 9:30 in the morning on a Sunday. So obviously it happens, right? Because the same with Mr. Scungio's firm, they're also representing about 12 to 15 school districts.
I think at one point we got very comfortable without asking, just like you said, with communication. And I think some of that falls on our lap. Just being okay with not having people at meetings or not asking those correct questions, or, you know, just like was said tonight about the amount of how billing is. That's was a question tonight, but we've never asked for anything like that. So.
And every firm had the same answer.
Correct, they did.
Without hesitation.
Nope.
Very honest
Correct.
answers. Like there was, you know, it felt very natural for them to simply answer with, we would 100% direct our, like, you know, our monthly bill to whomever wanted to receive it, including the entire school committee, if everyone just wanted it every single month.
Okay, so we're going to the last one now? Or no?
Just so I can stay public, the statement that we don't ask questions, I ask questions at every meeting, and I'm gonna have more questions at the next meeting, and they just don't get answered. So when we say that we don't ask questions, I make it a point the last 4 meetings to ask public questions. I never got one follow-up from them. So we'll discuss that at the next meeting, but, so at some point, when you ask questions and you don't get answers, you just go with the flow for now, and that's exactly what I'm doing.
Yeah,
like I
and
said,
that wasn't a dig towards you at all.
No, I'm not saying this. I fully agree, because I sit here, and that's why I said I'm between a rock and a hard place, because at the end of the day, I want to say that, personally, I believe that Ben may be working on situations that this committee's not aware of. I'm sure he might be working on some that we are. It's just a big disconnect. I don't, and I'm trying to put my finger, that's why I brought up them questions to see where's the breakdown where this school committee, and to sit here and say that it's on our shoulders to drive for this information. If that's the case, then this school committee should have put a policy together going forward to say, we want all the information, but when you work with a team and you think it's gonna fluently flow, then why would we not? But we get to this point here, and we're at it, and I agree with Jess that, you know, it's a lot on my back. In other words, it's on everybody's back that they worked with us for the 2 years, they've been here for 7 years. I don't think anybody's asked them a question at all, in the years that we sat here before, with that, Jess, you know? And the old legal team was here for 20-something years, and they didn't get asked any questions to the same exact night. The same exact night was the same replay. And it's just, for some reason, me personally, I wish we got more input on a team that we hired, that we're responsible for. And the breakdown, I think, falls on everybody sitting up here, but not all of the fault should fall on our end. There are people in directly contact with them on a daily basis almost, or at least 3 times a week. And if they don't feel it's necessary to send that information down to us, that's going to approve bills, shame on whoever's doing that to us. That's my opinion. Thank you.
I don't know, maybe I miss. They were meeting, like, those three were meeting, going to majority of their school committee's meetings, is what my understanding was. It wasn't like, oh, you know, one or two. It was like, no, we're always in the school committee meetings, type of response. And not only that, but sub-policy, not sub-policy, well, they did use that as an example, but like subcommittee meetings as well. So I thought that was of note as well, in comparison to Barton and Gilman, that they didn't mention the subcommittee meetings. Does anyone else want to add anything else to the discussion regarding Hanius, Carroll, and Lombardo?
I just want to make it clear. We have to ask our, am I wrong that we ask our attorneys to come to meetings? Because if,
Yes.
I mean, we do. So, I mean, I'll give you, because, I mean, the Barrington, they want them there every time. So they're paying them to be there every time. So we would have to ask our current attorneys to be at our meetings. They're not coming just because to come. Okay, I just want to make that clear.
It's also a part of that goes into, like, I guess the initiative and want to be there too. You know what I'm saying? Like, not just like, oh, we were telling you to be there. It's like to want, for them to really want to be a part of the school committee also means like, I want you to want to be in the room with us type of thing too.
Well, they're
You
not
know?
going to want to be
So
there if
that's-
they're not getting paid.
So, like, that's, you know, that's the difference between how I saw them responding it, amongst, you know, others responding to that question. So that's just an observation from me. Sometimes attorneys really love what they're doing, and it makes them happy, and sometimes it's just a job to them. So that was just my observation. Any other comments with this one before we move on to the third one? All right. So we'll start off with, we'll end off with Brennan, Scungio, and Kressich.
I don't really have too much extra to add in. I kind of dovetailed them into, you know, yeah.
It's just an observation that I'll make it, I'll just reiterate that was said before, but just so the public knows too, like, I think what we've said is there's like a pretty similar list of clients between Hanius and Brandon, Scungio, and Kressich when it comes to a nice mix of public schools. Again, not seen in the first firm that we saw, but just wanted to make a note of that again for those that are listening.
Anybody, well, I feel like I'm anybody else? No?
You know, I did have, for the two hypothetical questions, I actually scored Bennett 3.5 stars for the first one and 3 on the second one. I was very comfortable with them two answers on them hypotheticals.
I was as well, and I'll also say that bringing up the savings that they have brought to our school district over the years, I think is very commendable.
I mean, the savings just on paper for billing hours, I know that we haven't been in court as much. I know we haven't had as many special ed issues as we had prior to Ben coming. I mean, I do have that background. I mean, there is a comfort level with his team. I mean, you always have that when you have a team that's already been here. You know, just like the other group, They know everybody at RIDE. They're very familiar with people. They have all the construction knowledge that they've had with the high school in Martin. They've been part of the whole thing. I mean, they've been in our negotiations, and our negotiations have gone well, to my knowledge. I mean, yeah, as best they could, but, I mean, again, there's stuff that I could do better. There's better communication that I think this committee could do with our legal team. I mean, I guess I could call him anytime I want and get any information I want. I don't.
I agree with that, just like we've never asked them really to come to, it comes down to dollars and cents.
Yeah.
To have them sit here,
The last time I did ask him to come, I did ask about we did just ask about the law, what we were in, what scenarios, how do I say this without getting myself in trouble?
The health and wellness policy.
No. When I asked,
Give like an explanation to the public about what
when we were dealing with the people that are suing us, or we're suing them, or they're in court with us. Remember, he came and
breakdown of the cases.
Let's go with breakdown of cases.
Yeah.
Case
I mean,
summary.
yeah, remember I asked him to come in because I wanted to know. We hadn't had that. But I think that's my fault. That's my fault for not asking for it. It's not our attorney's fault for not telling us. That's how I see it. That's just my opinion.
So just looking at the comparison of, the different proposals for legal fees and, what those structures look like, I think they're all within a very close ballpark, being like 200, 215, and 230. And then, different rate, that's for general, general matters. And then there's like a different breakdown depending on the firm, whether it's negotiations, whether it's, sitting in our meetings. So I think that should also be considered as well as, whether 200 is a savings to consider for the school committee or not. Early on, one of our discussions was if we're asking for the school committee to, consider cuts in the future on, where to have savings so that, the school district has, a balanced budget, is the school committee, above looking at their own, expenditures essentially on that budget as well. And which also includes, legal services as well. So that's just something that I like to point out, that Haney's was the firm with the lowest hourly fee. But, Ben's firm also has the flat rate arrangement as well as Barton Gilman as well, that kind of balances that out when it comes to, any other services that we want to, negotiate and having that instead. So I thought that was important to just mention as well, that there's that financial matter that has to be considered, or should be considered, I should say.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's like kind of, and like coming back to a point maybe already made, but there's like two sides of the coin, right? You have two firms that we met with this evening who are working with 12 to 15 different school districts, and on one side of the coin, you can say like, it's a lot of time, time like spread out, right? How is time being allocated when there's so many different districts, right? On the other side of the coin, though, it's like they're doing a lot of the same work for all the districts, and so therefore you're able to kind of like reap those benefits, right? Which were described tonight. I believe, by both firms, Mr. Scundrill's firm, I think a little, maybe more in depth, just in terms of like how policies being created, being applied to multiple districts, how that can be sliced out, and there's cost savings there, but also it's the benefit of when there's 15 school districts that a firm is working with and there's an issue that pops up in one of them, it's an opportunity to start looking into all the other districts that they're representing to ensure that, those policies are tightened up. So, there's that benefit that Bart and Gilman didn't come with.
Brian, can I just mention, if we're going to talk about finances, Heeney's is hourly school committee meeting. Scungio's is $350. Theirs is $200 an hour.
Well, unless it goes
Find
over
me a
750.
school committee meeting that we've ever had that's 1 hour long with a cap of $750. So you have to look at that as well. You have to look at that as well.
Yeah,
Okay?
absolutely.
When you're looking at that. And that's a monthly fee. And if you have more than one school committee meeting a month, just want to make sure we're looking at all the numbers when we look at the numbers.
But there was, when I had asked them, and I had broke that down, they said they would be for an hourly wage. All these numbers are negotiable. I don't think, because I don't think anybody thinks they're gonna come in here for $750.
Oh, I'm sorry, but Hanius and Carroll, they have a flat rate up to
Yeah.
$750. And
Right
so essentially, if they were here for 3.5 hours plus,
Yes.
it would max out at $750. We wouldn't pay no more for the fourth,
That-
fifth, sixth hour.
Right,
But if they were here for 2.5 hours, we would pay their hourly rate per hour they were here.
Right, and then that would just come down to the school committee to readjust their agenda to have them first on the agenda. It all comes down to dollars and cents. If we can get them in here for 1 hour per meeting, if you looked at what we looked at, it'd be less than probably $3,100 for an entire year to sit to a school committee just so they can engage and hear some of it for a whole hour. We wouldn't want to stick them at the end of it. So I think they were all in the same ballpark with that. And it seems that everybody that sat here said that they were at school committee members, at these meetings and stuff across the board. That's part of, I don't want to use the word policy, but we come and say, how often do they come here? It's dollars and cents. We have to do a little better job looking at that. That's what I believe, because just by them sitting there, they might get, an ear something coming up. They go back to their office the next day to research something.
Yeah, no,
You don't
totally.
want
And
it
I
there.
mean, I think there's a lot of benefit in just coming here to be here as an active listener, or as a listener, to kind of like be able to remain in that flow of like a school committee meeting. And I think it's it's even more crucial to be here when there's agenda items that would warrant having legal advice or conversations after the post meeting or before the meeting, which I feel like we do receive that currently. And it's not all about dollars and cents. I think what was echoed throughout this evening during this process was the fact that it's ensuring that we're getting the value for the amount of money we're spending. So regardless of how much we're spending, is that price point worth, right, the value of the services that we're getting? I think that's really what it comes down to, correct? If we're looking into potentially changing our legal team, it really comes down to, are we satisfied with the services being provided? And then are we satisfied with the services being provided at that price point, right? That's just a variable in terms of like, if we were going to make a decision, that could be something that could sway a decision one way or another for somebody. But really what it comes down to is like, are we satisfied with the services we're currently receiving? And if not, is there another, firm out there who we feel would give better services, regardless of the amount of money, because it could be invaluable, right? Better services could equal more money. And I'm not saying that I have a determination or a decision made. Again, it's a lot of information, like 3 different interviews. It's a lot of information to digest and to consider. But I think that's really what it comes down to. That's the point of this practice, is to look into, is this school committee satisfied with the services we're currently being provided with by our current legal team? And if not, is there a better team out there to serve our committee, our district and our superintendent and administrators?
That was very nicely said, Ryan.
Additional comments regarding Ben Scungio's firm? Or any of the firms? if everyone is ready to move on to the next item, just give me a yes. So I know, so I'm not cutting off anyone mid-thought. Yeah. Next item, please. All right. Consider and a vote to approve the appointment of legal services. We just had a discussion, so I consider that as a consider, but again, if anyone else wants to add anything else at this point, the floor is yours. Okay. At this time, I'll entertain a motion then. If it's for any particular one, or
I'm currently happy with our legal team, so I'll make a motion to keep our legal team.
is there a second? Is there a second?
I mean, like I stated, I feel like there's just just a lot of information to continue to digest. So, for myself. So, I just wanted to make sure on the record, it's not necessarily I feel like disapproval of any services being received, but I feel like there's just a lot of information to continue to work through before I can feel confident in making a decision on this action item.
Just to clarify, that is not a second.
That is not a
Okay.
second.
I just need to make sure that Sharon, she's taking the minutes. Is there a second? Motion fails. Is there a different motion from any of the school committee members?
Make a motion that we hire Andrew Hennessy.
Is there a second for Hanius Carol Lombardo LLC? I just had to add the whole name for you, Tony.
Thank you.
Is there a second?
Second.
All that say aye?
Aye.
Aye. Is that Tony and Max? Is that an aye? Are there any nays?
Nay.
Is there, okay, there's 2 nays, Sharon. The appointment of legal services is given to Hanius Carol Lombardo LLC. Next item, please.
Next item is adjournment.
I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All that say aye?
Aye.
Aye.